Just think back to your childhood and you'll remember that Yu-Gi-Oh has a sacred formula. You immediately picture Yugi turning the game around at the last second, the blue eyes white dragon, and all that over-the-top drama about saving humanity with pieces of cardboard. We got so used to that epic tone that it almost feels impossible to imagine the franchise any other way. But that's exactly where today's show comes in. Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens. They basically took the most famous card game on the planet and turned it into a chaotic mess, fighting against the corporate system. Forget the pharaohs and ancient magic. The protagonist now is Yuga, a kid inventor who decides to hack the official rules because he thinks the current format is stiff and boring. And the story fully embraces the absurd. There are duels with electric guitars, giant tractors crashing into the arena, and even a 37-year-old executive pretending to be a child. It sounds completely unhinged, but the series stands by a simple idea: fun should always come first. So today on the channel, Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens, the wildest rebellion in the franchise.
What's going on?
How did you play Maki-You while it was still my turn?
With magic.
Yuga wakes up from a heroic daydream by slamming his head into a lamp, only to discover that his compulsive addiction to modding toys has earned him his 5th system penalty. One more, and his account is banned for good, just like you, after getting a well-deserved ban in a tactical shooter. At school, Student Council President Gavin gives him a colossal lecture, but a blue-haired emo kid named Luke appears, promising to show him a secret spot where Yuga can shove his new rules. They head down to the basement and encounter a hologram of an exhibitionist old man ready to test anyone. When a corporate drone threatens to ban everyone, Luke uses his supposed demonic power to touch the robot, causing it to short-circuit completely, and leaving the group baffled by his strange ability to kill electronics with a physical touch. To make matters worse, Yuga's dual disc starts running out of battery, forcing the straight-laced Gavin to pedal the protagonist's bike like a hamster on steroids to generate enough power. With the lights on, Yuga programs his rush duel style, forcing the update right in the middle of the match. In the blink of an eye, he spits out 3 small monsters onto the field at once, but the holographic boomer isn't playing around. The old man simply sacrifices his minions to summon the legendary Blue Eyes White Dragon in all its glory, annihilating the kid's front line and leaving Yuga with a measly 1,000 life points after taking a direct lightning blast to the chest. However, these custom rules are absurdly broken. Yuga draws 5 cards out of nowhere, summons Seven's Road Magician, and starts pumping him full of pure magical steroids. The protagonist dumps every element into the graveyard until the magician hits a monumental 7,000 attack. Mercilessly, he pulverizes the damn white dragon and obliterates the hologram from existence. The main system is successfully hacked, and the dual discs of every kid in the city transform into the shape of a massive 7, marking the chaotic arrival of the new rules. Convinced he's claimed the absolute throne, Luke charges forward with total confidence to pass through the glowing door, only to flatten his nose against an invisible wall. It was just another useless hologram. While Luke hallucinates about a bizarre corporate plan to climb the company ladder just to force the entire planet to play cards his way, Yuga completely ignores his friend, spending the whole time happily tinkering with the wiring of a surveillance drone. The next day, Luke acts like a paranoid schizophrenic, thinking the mega corporation is going to fry their accounts at any second. Roman casually throws out some bait, suggesting they settle their anxiety by throwing hands, or cards, in the courtyard. Before the cards even hit the table, Luke fries his brain cells, releasing his machine-breaking energy, disabling the phones of all the simps nearby to ensure no one records his supposed genius. Yuga starts the match looking like a lost amateur, summoning only 1 weak monster. Luke doesn't forgive the blunder. He fills the field with 3 dragons and vomits fire non-stop at the protagonist, burning his life points down to a sad 1,000. Drowning in his own ego, Luke decides to drop a monologue, confessing he acquired his insane skills by bypassing security and invading forbidden arcades to humiliate grown men. Reacting to the trauma, Yuga stuffs his hand with new cards, drags his Seven's Road Magician to the center of the arena, and starts calculating a perfect victory through piercing damage. But when it's time to draw the final card from the top to activate his trump card and boost his attribute, he pulls a shiny generic spell instead of the guaranteed monster, leading to an embarrassing failure that only scratches his opponent and leaves Luke hanging by a thread. Taking advantage of the humiliation, Luke summons multi-strike dragon Dragius and begins the real massacre. The creature punches the protagonist's side not once, but twice in a row, reducing Yuga's life bar to 0 instantly.
Infinite destruction!
As he lies face down on the ground in his own invented game, Yuga laughs in relief and points to the modified drone floating above. He reveals he used the little robot to live stream his own beating and humiliation to thousands of bored people on the internet. The illegal duel goes uncontrollably viral across the world, while the elderly president of Goha Corp listens to the phone ring and just cackles morbidly in his chair like a true sadistic psychopath. Yuga pedals his duel bike in the morning until he falls victim to Luke's magic finger, which shuts down the machine just to warn him in a panic that their video has vanished from the internet. Roman passes by taking photos like a D-list spy, which obviously triggers Luke's paranoid schizophrenia that the girl is working for the megacorp. To squeeze out the truth, Yuga shoves a long rod with a microphone in Roman's face. The lie-detecting contraption blinks frantically and explodes right in the girl's face, proving the protagonist's engineering is a public hazard. To cover up the trauma, he drags Roman to his clandestine lab, where his drone begs for her autograph. Yuga christens the simp bot Kaizo, who spends the rest of the time drooling over the guitarist. Abusing his own ego, Yuga challenges the girl to a duel. As Roman draws her deck, Luke crawls through the grass like a thirsty goblin to snoop through her coveted guitar case, only to be restrained by the preppy Gavin. In the arena, Yuga drops his Seven's Road magician and massacres the defenseless beginner's backline. But Roman sneakily draws her card, summons Prima Gitarna, the shining superstar, and puts on a rock show, sacrificing her own life points to buff everyone. The sonic guitar blast obliterates Yuga's magician. Luke finally manages to pry open the mysterious case, only to discover that inside a guitar case, there is, shockingly, a goddamn guitar. Yuga enters desperation mode, recycles his graveyard, has a massive cosmic delusion to draw his magician again, and pulverizes the girl's hologram, wiping out her life points. While Yuga dismantles the simp drone with a screwdriver to reset the poor thing, a weird green-haired kid spies on Roman's photos in the dark of his room, proving the girl really was an undercover agent after all. Gavin has the most psychopathic morning routine possible before sunrise, but his peace is shattered when Yuga kidnaps the poor guy to record a questionable commercial. With Roman refusing to sing in the video, Yuga forces the council president to sing the school anthem. The result is a noise so hellish and out of tune that the drone's circuits almost melt from pure agony. Traumatized by his own humiliation, Gavin stares at a piece of cardboard called Yamaruler the Dark Delayer and snaps, interpreting that the card ordered him to ban duels at school. Yuga proposes a bet where the loser resigns from their position, but Gavin spends the afternoon being treated like a servant by lazy students, solving everything from rugby matches to radioactive bathroom issues, arriving at the arena sweaty and miserable. To prove his aristocratic superiority, Gavin dons a lord's robe and refuses to touch his own cards, forcing two students dressed as ninjas to draw his deck for him. After a lot of stalling and Yuga laughing in his face, Gavin finally gets his hands dirty, summons Yamaruler, and activates a cowardly effect that bans level 7 monster summons before mercilessly beating the protagonist with an attribute swapping spell. However, Yuga simply mocks the preppy kid's strategy. He summons Seven's Road Witch and uses a loophole in the rules to special summon his supreme magician, tossing Gavin's lockdown in the trash. The magician blasts the shock samurai and reduces the president's dignity to dust. A promise is a promise, and Gavin resigns from the school throne in dramatic tears.
From now on, call me Gavin. Or better yet, your friend.
Gavin!
Immediately after, a new election is held. Gavin crushes Luke at the polls without mercy and returns to the exact same position a minute later. To crown the pointlessness of the entire episode, Yuga transforms the simp drone into a heated automatic stamper, solving the crushing bureaucracy so Gavin can go back to being the babysitter for this group of misfits. Goha Corp put on their censorship pants and deleted absolutely everything regarding rush duels from the corporate internet. Faced with the crisis, our delinquent with 2 collective brain cells, Luke decides to solve the problem by calling the company's customer service. Unfortunately, he meets his greatest real-life mortal enemy, the English language, failing to communicate just like you trying to pass an interview at a foreign firm. Desperate for publicity, the kids give an interview to the school's journalism club. The problem is, the next day they wake up to a front page of pure trash, calling the game shallow and wonderfully painting Luke as a crazy, tyrannical despot. They go to settle the score with the printing press brats, and their leader, a preppy little gnome gnome named Scoop throws down the ultimate challenge, an epic card duel that will dictate whether they get a retraction. Scoop proves to be the king of boredom, using monsters that are literally walking paper presses to try and stamp defeat onto Luke's forehead, reducing our ego king to a miserable 100 life points. Scoop is already smiling while taking photos of his funeral, but obviously, the kid wasn't going to take this humiliation lying down. Taking advantage of the unconditional love the script has for him, Luke spits out all his rage, summons his beloved Dragias, and squeezes through a loophole in the card's multi-attack rule. He obliterates the kid's journalism workshop with a lethal ball of electricity that clears the field.
It's been a blast, Scoop! It's over.
Totally traumatized by the unsupervised beatdown, the little gnome switches alliances faster than a politician in a crisis and promises to finally report the truth. The brats keep their word and deliver an edition full of genuine praise for the game. But to everyone's despair, they publish a shoddy montage of Luke portrayed as a king, while his friends appear as useless servants, much to Luke's absolute delight and excitement, proving this guy is beyond help. Fame has gone straight to his head, and now Luke has a fixed advice column in the newspaper. However, the focus shifts quickly when they discover the local ramen shop is dying, thanks to a new high-tech restaurant. The shop's old owner is so humiliated by the competition that he begs in tears to cook one last pot of soup before closing down and being crushed by the market for good. In a foolproof attempt to spy on the rivals, they stumble into the smart restaurant's loser detector. The door's AI simply bars Yuga's entry, diagnosing him as having the face of an undercover burglar, and rejects Gavin due to his obvious genetic inclination toward being an insufferable complainer. The solution is to dress the crawling drone as a delivery bot, but the piece of junk only goes in there to drool over the metal curves of other female robots, and comes back rubbing it in the group's face, how that environment is infinitely superior. The news shatters the old cook's psyche so badly that he literally sticks 2 fish cakes over his eyes, and collapses in a deep catatonic depression. Without permission, a weirdo dressed as a ninja sprouts from the ground, leaking all his own personal data and documents to Yuga, before panicking and challenging the kid over the old man's dying soup. The shop becomes the prize of a culinary duel where the ninja otaku reduces Yuga's supreme magician to pathetic levels using boiled chicken broth traps. While the shop owner tosses noodles at the ceiling like an idiot in the background, Yuga injects mana and turns his magician into a flamethrower that would make anyone jealous, disintegrating the ninja into a human barbecue without a shred of mercy. Yuga decides they'll all share and eat the giant meal together in a rare burst of unity, but they turn their backs for too long, and don't notice that Luke has crouched down and sucked all the old man's hot liquid straight from the pot into his stomach. After draining the whole thing dry, the absurdity leaves the old man so inspired that his will to live returns. But the fake piece sinks completely when they return to visit the main data plaza and find the area full of holes, realizing that the giant relic was simply stolen while they were stuffing themselves with noodles. At the useless Goha Corp headquarters, the suits are sweating bullets and crying around a table because a bunch of brats are breaking their closed-off game. Their only clue is a photo of Yuga holding a notebook, so the company's smallest executive, Mimi, a 37-year-old woman trapped in a youthful body, decides to disguise herself as an elementary student to get her hands on that enemy intel. She shows up in the classroom exuding radioactive boomer energy, talking about leg warmers and the lambada, which would obviously fool any idiot, and Yuga instantly invites her to join the group, based on his total zero capacity for judging humans. Luke smells a cheap spy, so Mimi tries to bribe these children with the most geriatric gifts possible, throwing VHS tapes at Gavin and a Jurassic cassette player at Roman. The plan miraculously works because shonen protagonists have the IQ of a revolving door, and she gains access to the lab. After nearly blowing her identity by talking into a brick she dares to call a cell phone, the old lady returns at night dressed as a ninja to steal the notebook, only to turn on the light and find the whole squad waiting for her with crossed arms. Instead of calling the police, Yuga simply offers her the notebook for free. Mimi's corporate, traumatized mind collapses, thinking it's a lethal virus masked as kindness. She refuses the paper and demands to settle it in a duel. The little lady summons an army of monsters that look like they're headed to an 80s nightclub, buffing her life points and healing everything while her disco queen rubs her polygonal body against Yuga's magician until he explodes in a light show. But Yuga wakes up from his tactical coma, spits high-level sorcerers onto the arena, and buffs a rookie warrior to slice the disco queen in half, wiping out the infiltrator's life points.
The bearer of noble arms! Attack!
In the end, Yuga shoves the notebook into her hands anyway, and the next day, Goha's brightest and highest paid minds spend hours melting their brains trying to decode kindergarten scribbles, thinking it's an unstoppable tactical code. Under a sun capable of frying brain cells, our heroes are melting on the asphalt trying to find the damn stolen relic. The only thing they find is the humiliation of watching Roman greedily gulp down the last drop of cold liquid from a vending machine while the boys agonize from thirst. On the way to another machine, a masked brute doing a terrible Mad Max cosplay blocks the path. He introduces himself as Yash and demands to crush Luke, seeking pure revenge because the idiot published garbage advice in his school newspaper column and ruined his life. As it turns out, Yash is just a tiny primary school kid who followed Luke's cheap motivational tip. He donned Combat King apocalyptic armor to try and convince his mom to let him play cards, but the old lady just thought he'd become a psychotic delinquent and summarily cut off the vital supply of fettuccine with sausage from his diet. In the duel, the brat shows no pity, activating a field spell that turns everything into a polluted junkyard, pumping up his beastly monsters, and shredding the attack of Luke's dragons, leaving the heroes roasting in the heat of the arena, while Yash's mechanical monkey hurls its own partners at Luke's face like homemade ammo. But Luke, sweaty and offended, decides to use the 2 brain cells he has left. The boy recycles dragons from the graveyard like a panicked environmentalist, brings his new destroyer monster to the field, and uses the resonance of the scaly duo to blow the opponent's apocalyptic stage into 1,000 glowing pieces. With the pollution cancelled, the dragons regain their muscle mass and sweep the hurling primate and the mutts off the map, slamming the Combat King to the ground and breaking his scary mask to reveal a teary little face. Trying to pretend he isn't a monster who crushes children's dreams, Luke gives some fluff talk about not changing who you are. The boy goes home inspired to face his mother's fury head-on. But the absurd twist is that his mom is none other than Mimi, the corporate lady from the previous episode, who welcomes her cub with open arms and a giant pot of his beloved creamy pasta. At a foggy construction site, workers run away upon seeing the silhouette of a giant monster with glowing eyes, affectionately nicknamed Gossi by Luke. Like any group of bored kids, Yuga and his crew decide to hunt the anomaly, using a bizarre modification on the fanboy robot Kaizo, who now holds 2 wands swinging wildly to track any wild and dangerous presence. The maximum alert leads them straight to a ramen stall, where they find 3 self-proclaimed nerds from the Dinosaur Club, led by Diggs, a kid in a lab coat who screams the word Jurassic non-stop. The prehistoric squad joins our gang of useless heroes. While searching for freaks in the city center, Luke devours a stinking durian and almost steals a juicy bone from a neighbor's dog to lick it, proving his intelligence is significantly lower than a street pug's. Moments later, the 3 fake paleontologists go to a park restroom and start whispering their evil plans to turn Gossi into a capitalist attraction to swim in pools of fake money. But the idiots didn't count on Luke coming out of the stall right behind them, pulling up his pants with a smile after punishing the porcelain and hearing absolutely everything. To punish the betrayal, Yuga challenges Diggs to a duel. The lab coat kid reveals his moving backstory of when he shoved a piece of petrified dinosaur poop in his ear just to hear the relaxing sound of an ancestral flush. With the power of dung in mind, he focuses on the match and tearfully brings out his powerful beefed-up lizard, Super King Rex, sending Yuga's points into a hole. But the master of MacGyvered contraptions refuses to be flattened by an elderly gecko. Yuga drops a colossal flaming meteor on Diggs's face, reduces the scaly anomaly's attack, and crushes the kid's Tyrannosaurus with a massive magical slash.
No! Super King Rex!
With the team's morale restored, they rush to the construction site to capture the dreaded Gossi, only for the damn fog to clear and reveal that the terrifying monster was just some red heating pipes shaking from the heat of an unbearable guitar that Yuga himself had left activated there to cancel noise. The group turns their backs on the inventor's failure and returns to the hologram basement. The nerd kid's violent sneeze kicks up cosmic dust, revealing 7 mysterious emblems carved into the grimy floor, and our mini-spy takes a photo of the whole foolproof to send straight into the slimy hands of her mobster cousin. The master of tinkering takes that hellish guitar from the last investigation disaster and transforms it into pure tech, placing this long and thick musical instrument into the trembling hands of Roman, who lights up and rubs her fingers together, testing the new toy. As a generous reward, the girl tosses the audience some VIP tickets to her own indescribable band's show, Roa Roman. It turns out the idolized vocalist of the group is Roa, that preppy K-popper wannabe and Roman's cousin, who immediately shows his familial love by brutally throwing the poor girl against a luxury apartment window in a possessive delusion, crushing every cell of courage in her to keep his authoritarian fantasies secret. Arriving at the old club to enjoy the show, our brainless brute Luke wanders away from the pack down a dark hallway and starts sweating bullets when he bumps into a bathroom goth kid exuding despair. The dark-haired creep starts narrating the funeral of random instrumentalists while screaming a peculiar phrase demanding Luke watch his back, making the muscular protagonist spin around like a disturbed maiden protecting his rear. In shock, he barely notices Roman's magical disappearance from the dressing room, and the gang flees in terror straight into the frenetic stage lights. Surprising everyone present, the crazy cousin traps Yuga in a beam of burning light and proposes a twisted pact, betting the entire patented concept and the throne of rush duels on his sharp vocal cords in a dirty team fight. Driven by pure fury, Luke swallows his wounded pride and steps up, blowing out the opening lights, only to run into the bathroom ghost again, who was secretly the show's forgotten bassist. The long-haired creep fries Luke's hand with a malicious spell while making repulsive zombies bounce around the rotting stage, obsessively screaming for Luke to get behind him, miserably shrinking all of Luke's defenses.
Witness phantom fear! By sending a card...
The humiliated Luke finally realizes that his stupid brain had been associating mystical commands with the guy's own useless name. With no ghost hanging on his neck and no imperative need to protect his assets, he pushes forward and awakens his devastating draconic monster. In a heavy and relentless exchange of energy blasts aimed at the skeletal face of the enemy specter, Luke sends that funereal musical aberration straight back to the grave, rubbing the first victory in Roa's mocking face, who seems to find the whole disaster incredibly charming for his disgusting resume. With the circus set for the second round of the Battle of the Bands, Gavin summons his courage, rips off his normal clothes in the middle of the stage, and reveals a ridiculous traditional outfit, only to discover his opponent is Roman. The girl throws their friendship in the trash, calls everyone a brainless idiot, just like you, and confesses she only hung out with them to spy. Yuga plays it cool, saying he already knew everything, proving he's so needy he'll even accept a manipulative traitor in the group. Drawing that long and thick instrument modified by the protagonist, Roman weirdly salivates, imagining the dual guitar as a piece of grilled squid while her stomach screams for help. It turns out Roa's underlings devoured the entire dressing room banquet, leaving the poor girl on the brink of a deep starvation-induced delusion. Gavin tries to play the strategist, locking down powerful summons and bringing the sword down on his former friend, thinking she'll surrender, but he only succeeds in waking the true sleeping beast. Roman's chronic hunger activates her killer instinct, complete with demonic red eyes and a bizarre stomach growl that drowns out even the guitar solos. Without the slightest hesitation, she pays her life points like they aren't worth a cent, puts the president's strong monster to sleep with a childish spell, and floods the field with her metalhead magical girls. In a burst of fury and low blood sugar, Roman obliterates Gavin's defenses and crushes what was left of his dignity in a single brutal attack. The exact second the preppy kid kisses the dirt in shame, Yuga's miraculous guitar ejects a flying chocolate bar straight into the girl's mouth. She swallows the sweet, drooling with happiness, reverts to her controlled, preppy girl self, and accidentally lets slip in front of the entire audience that she's being secretly blackmailed by her own cousin, who now enters the ring to go head-to-head with the protagonist. The time for the final showdown has arrived, and our generic K-pop idol bedazzles the crowd with an indescribable divine aura, which is actually just a grotesque piece of cardboard and some flashlights held up by his own exploited bandmates. Flaunting his cheap arrogance, Roa refuses to get his shiny hands dirty, filling his field with face-down spells like the supreme coward he was born to be. Yuga isn't intimidated and beats the hell out of the enemy's front line with direct attacks, shaving off precious life points. However, the knockoff idol smiles malevolently because his true plan involves pure corporate legal scumminess, with the manipulative subtlety of a sociopath path, Roa publicly exposes the dubious origin of the boy's famous Seven's Road magician. He spreads the rumor that the brat obtained the card from a fugitive hologram, and that his cherished piece of paper is basically illegal contraband. In a world where card game rules carry more weight than the government, the 37-year-old woman disguised as a student panics while trying to hack the corporation's security system, only to be met with a pathetic "data does not exist" error on her screen. Thanks to the moronic bureaucracy of official guidelines, the match instantly transforms into a sadistic game of Russian roulette. If Yuga dares to lay a hand on that cursed magician again, he'll lose the duel via a humiliating disqualification. While the group of supporting characters scatters like panicked roaches to prove that another copy of that obscure card exists, Roa decides to publicly torture the protagonist. He activates wicked spells of mass destruction, forcing Yuga to vomit his hand into the graveyard and swallow massive waves of new cards straight from his deck with no right of refusal. With every forced draw, the mathematical odds scream imminent disaster in Yuga's face. With nowhere to hide, he gulps and pulls 5 pieces of cardboard to try and stay alive in the match, his legs freezing the moment the smiling, forbidden face of the magician shimmers lethally between his trembling fingers. Yuga draws the forbidden card, and the useless Kaizo drone immediately shines a spotlight to disqualify the kid in front of everyone, but the ground suddenly begins to shake as if someone's mother started jumping rope. A gigantic relic in the shape of a colossal slab bursts from the ground, leaving Roa's band speechless at the monument's sheer girth. The Dinosaur Club unearths the information that the emblems on the rock form the arena's logo until the stone glows and ejects Otis, the monstrous hologram who arrives to declare Yuga as the true chosen one just to spite society. The Journalism Club scum releases a cassette tape proving Otis was only banned from old tournaments because he was a Goha suit, confirming that Yuga's beloved piece of cardboard is 100% legalized. Roa realizes his pathetic corporate plan has failed miserably and cries like a rejected ex, screaming into the microphone about why Otis didn't give that succulent magician to him instead. Yuga decides to take pity on the hysterical meltdown and bets the title of King of Duels right then and there. He vomits Seven's Road magician onto the field, pumps the card with infinite buffs, and fires away, but Roa cowers behind a trap. On the salty K-popper's turn, he sacrifices his own dignity to summon his terrifying metalhead monster. The abomination sucks the power out of Yuga's monster, crushes the witch in a brawl, and leaves our protagonist on life support with a ridiculous 500 life points. Without a hint of whining, Yuga draws cards from the beyond, resurrects his magician, and summons Seven's Road Mage, activating a combo that unites the spirits of all his discarded trash into a blinding energy. He sinks the rocker monster's attack points and sends Roa plummeting straight into a dark, humiliating digital abyss. The corporate police still try to confiscate the vibrating monument, but the stone sneakily sinks back underground. In the end, Luke demands to know Roman's dark secret, only for Yuga to leak that the only reason she betrayed humanity is that she's incapable of hitting a musical note. The spy snaps in shame as she realizes her own colossal stupidity. Resentment continues to reign, and Luke ignores the traitorous girl with the same coldness you get from an online ghosting. To fix the shattered friendship, the protagonist suggests the most primitive tactic for subduing males, filling the void in Luke's stomach with home-cooked food. The pervy drone analyzes every possible data point and ejects the recipe for the perfect curry. Thrilled to receive even crumbs of attention from Roman, Kaizo flies desperately through the streets until he bumps into Goha security drones. Without a second thought, he engages in a phallic robotic transformation of questionable taste and enters a comedic duel of schizophrenic machines that nobody cares to watch. Meanwhile, using his defeated cousin's luxury apartment, Roman decides to prove her kitchen talent is a terrorist risk. Instead of washing the food properly, she tosses a whole bag of flour into the air and lights the stove, causing a brutal detonation in the student council's faces. As if burning her friends wasn't enough of a warning, she completely ignores the vegetables and decides to spice up the pot by pouring in black powder, sulfur, and actual heavy substances, triggering a chemical explosion that turns the area into a clandestine lab. The result emerges from the cauldron as thick, bluish radiation. The smell attracts a starving Luke, who doesn't even blink before shoving all that blue goo down his throat. Defying all laws of biology, he feels shivers of pleasure and sheds tears of joy, claiming this creamy atrocity is the most delicious thing his mouth has ever accommodated.
This curry is so amazing! It's pure genius! The texture is exquisite and the flavor.
Feeling her ego inflate, Roman decides to double down and throws even more vials of weird powder into the bottom of her pot. The reaction triggers a physical anomaly and fires a volcanic geyser of blue paste through the ceiling. The episode closes showing the utter despair on the rich kid Roa's face as he arrives at the sidewalk to find his entire luxury apartment complex spraying endless waves of that sticky blue cream out of every window. The voice on the loudspeaker announces that the cruise won't return to port for an entire month, throwing a bucket of cold water on our protagonists. It turns out the pervy drone tricked everyone by promising the relic's location, and the geniuses boarded a fishing boat that is actually a Goha Aquatic elementary school. The boat's fishing net pulls up Kaizo's discarded robotic body, and the ship's captain, a tanned kid named Skipjack, instantly decides Yuga is the scum of the earth, nature's arch enemy who clogs the oceans with plastic waste. To clean the seas, the fisherman draws his duel disc and forces Yuga to fight for his life on the water. The marine lackey activates the big Umi spell card, reducing the protagonist's attack and making Luke and the others act as if they are actually drowning, completely forgetting that holograms don't fill lungs with water. Skipjack slams 3 fish onto the table, humiliates Yuga's land monsters, and vomits damage with a jacked-up tuna equipped with torpedo cannons. Yuga survives by a miracle by activating a trap that heals life points, but he remains as broke as a bank account at the end of the month. To turn the tide, he summons Lightning Volt Condor, sacrifices a water magician to electrocute the entire table, and fries the sailor's sushi with a concentrated bolt until his points hit 0. The fisherman realizes Yuga isn't an eco-terrorist, but the real shock comes when the bicycle seat projects a video revealing that Kaizo's essence was swallowed by a black slime. The flying drone confesses he's an imposter before taking flight and ditching for the city. Skipjack tosses the kids into a fast speedboat to hitch a ride back to mainland. As soon as they hit the street, the protagonist's radar ruthlessly points out that the kidnapper's trail leads straight to the most absurdly expensive restaurant in town, Gastrobite. Following the kidnapped drone's signal, the entire daycare center invades the Gastrobite luxury restaurant, where they find the 37-year-old executive huddling in the shadows, pretending she has a social life. The idiot Luke decides it's a genius idea to swallow piles of food thinking it was dirt cheap, but the promotional offer expires, and the machine shoves an astronomical bill of $666,000 in the kids' faces. Without a penny to their names, they are instantly enslaved at the kitchen sink. The dishwashing supervisor is Buff Grimes, a muscular cleaning maniac who hates rush duels and warns them that their existence is the world's true filth. Roman takes the heat, pulls out her guitar, and accepts the duel to forgive the billionaire debt. The buff janitor spends the entire match scrubbing his duel disc with a nasty rag as if he has uncontrollable OCD. In reality, the compulsive cleaning disguised his dirty fingers pressing buttons to hack the system and draw the same spell card infinite times, bathing Roman's rocker in soap and burying her attack points underground. Seeing her friend on the verge of becoming a full-time housewife for the rest of her life, Luke emerges from the shadows and releases the static of his schizophrenic demonic power to fry the disc's cheating circuits. The problem is that the big guy's ego inflates too much, and he starts demanding Roman kneel and call him the Great Master Luke. Feeling her patience snap and hating being humiliated just when she wanted to cry with relief, the girl simply goes Joker mode again. Her eyes glow a demonic red. She engages rage mode, summons psychic rock goddesses, and crushes the detergent maniac with a festival of piercing damage and a heavy metal bazooka. Slumped on the floor, the janitor lets slip information about a secret door in the facility. Yuga pries the lock open with his duel disc, and they discover a bizarre kid floating in a cybernetic chair, welcoming the suckers to his weird lair. Tucked into a massage chair in the basement of Goha City, Nail Saionji is an 11-year-old kid who thinks he controls the universe just because he hacked the company's Wi-Fi while he was still in diapers. After luring our idiot heroes into his personal dungeon, he displays a flash drive with the stolen data from the Kaizo drone. Seeing the bicycle bicycle seat vibrating furiously in Yuga's hand confirms the digital hostage is real and desperate to return. The rule of the game is simple. If they lose 6 times to Nail's henchmen, their game accounts will be deleted, and they'll go back to being absolute failures, just like you. The first opponent emerges from the shadows, revealing himself to be Kit, a disturbed furry wearing a giant cat head and meowing at the end of his sentences. Luke decides he's going to beat the animal, but the duel uses a garbage system where he has to guess the type of card on top of his own deck to be allowed to attack. Being a mule who can't even think before speaking, Luke fails repeatedly, taking free shocks to the system. With his morale completely destroyed, he suffers the worst possible humiliation as 2 virtual kittens climb up his leg to kick his face and samba on his dignity until a measly 100 life points remain. On the verge of crying in the fetal position, Luke decides to ask if Yuga will pass the title of King of Duels to him in the future, but the protagonist cuts his delusion short with a glorious no. Driven by the pure hatred of rejection and a thirst for attention, Luke transcends his own stupidity, summons a colossal dragon on steroids, perfectly predicts the top cards of his deck, and vaporizes the kitties in the blink of an eye.
Strike!
Kit cries while meowing as a trapdoor swallows his furry body into the darkness. Luke screams, demanding Nail come down and fight so he can get a beating too, but the supreme villain simply turns off the lights and teleports everyone back to the riverbank, reminding the kids that it's late and they have a math test tomorrow morning, destroying all dramatic tension in the most anticlimactic way possible. Turning her back on the imminent danger, Roman receives a call from Roa and abandons the group without a second thought to go clean up his mess. The rest of the band of idiots falls mysteriously into a hexagonal sewer that, by a convenient miracle of lethal architecture, leads straight back to Nail's underground arena. Greeting them with open arms and a focus on revenge is Tyler, Roman, and Roa's former drummer, who grew tired of being treated like a useless extra and has now sold his shiny soul to the arrogant child in the massage chair. To make Tyler's teenage drama even worse, Roa himself invades the dungeon with an air of sociopathic superiority, wanting to battle in Yuga's place. Tyler grumbles, spitting venom about how his former friend always steals the spotlight and never valued his sweat on the drums, but Roa simply spawns on top of 2 floating fruit crates and acts like he's opening a set at Rock in Rio. Tyler doesn't think twice and fires a storm of electric beetles that melt almost all of the arrogant rocker's life in the first turn. Roa couldn't care less about the massive damage. He summons his dark metal head, sucks the life energy out of Tyler's insects, and crushes the boy's hope. But when Tyler manages to hold on and seems to have the upper hand, Roa pulls a guitar out of nowhere and sings a sappy ballad in the middle of the arena, swearing that Tyler is his irreplaceable partner. The drummer cries like a weaned baby, greedily swallowing every word of the love song, which is the stupidest mistake of the night. Showing not a shred of remorse, Roa summons a new gigantic boss and pulverizes Tyler's points, while the kid was still wiping away tears. Unable to accept the defeat, Tyler falls into a death trapdoor, but Roa grabs his hand in a desperate rescue, claiming the band doesn't exist without him. The atmosphere reaches a perfect tragic peak until the moron Luke opens his mouth and yells to everyone that Roa was only calling Roman because he wanted to build a robot to replace Tyler on the drums. Feeling the crushing weight of being the world's biggest sucker, Tyler lets go of Roa's hand, boiling with rage, and plunges screaming into the abyss, while Roa watches completely unmoved. The protagonist wakes up sweating after dreaming of a giant robot penetrating a stone door and trips right over Kaizo's wire, ready to turn his delusion into his next useless invention. Meanwhile, the supreme villain in the cybernetic chair discovers that Yuga's passion for breaking rules is based on the word road, and his butler Seat Bastion is overtaken by a sickly envy. Being literally a massage chair with a god complex, the butler demands to crush the boy for daring to sit on a cheap bicycle seat. Back at the lab, Yuga flaunts the blueprints for his new supreme robot, and Kaizo vibrates thinking he'll be the centerpiece, until he realizes he's been cowardly positioned right in the machine's crotch as a mere cooling system. Foaming with rage at the anatomical humiliation, the drone flees, only for Roman and the other idiots to stumble upon 4 massage chairs in the middle of nowhere. Luke sinks into one of the seats and begins to moan uncontrollably from the deep vibrations, convincing the troop to try them out until the floor magically swallows the whole gang. They fall straight into Seat Bastion's chamber, who reveals his robotic form and initiates an insane duel, hurling demon furniture monsters with 0 attack points. The talking chair delivers a delusional monologue about how armchairs govern the destiny of humanity and summons a colossal throne of darkness to swallow the field. When Yuga prepares his counterattack, the corrupted butler kidnaps Kaizo and hides him in a Russian roulette of floating seats, threatening to fry the boy if he guesses wrong. But appealing to the scripted power of friendship, Yuga pulls the correct piece, returns the drone to the field, and summons Seven's Road Magician to obliterate the arrogant armchair with a massive jet of fire. Back on the surface, Yuga updates the robot's blueprints, demoting Kaizo from the crotch directly to the rear hole as a master butt deodorizer. While in the basement, the destroyed armchair cries oily tears, begging his master not to throw him in the junkyard. The undercover executive trapped in a preteen body enters a state of absolute existential panic upon realizing that Yash can't write an essay about heroes because she's a frustrated corporate salarywoman with no free time. While the idiot Luke tries to give profound advice by pronouncing words backward, the floor simply disappears for the second time this week, vomiting the boys straight onto a sofa in Nail's lair. Down there, Mimi herself assumes her number 6 persona with a questionable rave helmet, ready to obliterate the children and secure her promotion at the company. But by a freak occurrence of the universe, Yash himself appears in costume under pounds of heroic rubber and snatches the right to duel the corporate suit, having no clue he's about to beat up his own mother. The boy floods the arena with his apocalyptic pollution and summons a motorized gorilla to hurl allies into the executive's face. Refusing the familial humiliation, Mimi throws all her 9-to-5 corporate trauma onto the table. She summons her flashy nightclub queen and starts taking out her anger over crowded trains, abusive bosses, and dirty dishes directly on her son's life bar, pummeling the poor kid until only 100 points remain and his rubber suit is torn. But slumped on the ground, Yash finally understands that a real hero doesn't fly. They survive hellish traffic and still make dinner, exactly like his mother does for him. Absolutely inspired by the sweat of the proletariat, he summons a monstrous truck, chews up his own lackeys to inject the monster with steroids, and blasts his mother's nightclub with a cataclysmic beam of destruction. Mimi grabs her unconscious son, breaking her helmet and revealing her 37-year-old self to the choking kids. As a supreme punishment, Nail's system judges that the mother has become an enemy sympathizer and distributes penalty points to everyone's accounts, forcing the desperate woman to bribe Luke with blatant restaurant coupons, so the idiot keeps his mouth shut about the maternal fiasco. The gang of useless side characters gathers in the lab, trembling with fear of losing their childish game accounts, until the floor magically vanishes and spits Yuga, Luke, Gavin, Roman, and the noodle weirdo, Sabu Ramen, onto a giant mattress in the basement. Before they can process it, a woman in tight pink clothes and a ridiculous helmet appears, folding her body into positions that defy gravity and orthopedics. She introduces herself as Mysterious Am, and while contorting her spine at a bizarre angle, warns them about the gate of curiosity before fleeing like a crazed maniac. Obviously, it's Yash's mom paying for all her karmic sins to help the boys. Later, Sabu Ramen's canine nose leads the malnourished group to an underground ramen shop packed with corporate suits, whose manager is literally a tin-flying saucer that sprouts arms, legs, and the head of a pale girl named Celestia. After they swallow her thick, creamy soup so hard that Gavin spits blue fire, Sabu Ramen discovers the true flavor of the cosmos and decides to duel the alien to win an intergalactic ride and lick bowls across the rest of the universe. The cosmic weirdness shifts gears when the girl activates an outer space field spell, ruthlessly sucking the points from the Noodle Boy's low-level lackeys. But, channeling all the hunger of his carb-loaded soul, our culinary master finds the way of the ramen. He summons the extra spicy noodle ninja, pouring boiling water over the alien's hopes and finishing the fight by throwing calorie bombs right into her cybernetic face. With her points at 0, Celestia's ship enters a vital energy short circuit, forcing the creature to bid a sweet farewell with an ET-style finger touch.
We share will link us forever.
she turns into a blinding blue light and zips off into actual deep space, leaving a group of traumatized children questioning the fabric of cosmic reality. While the Noodle Kid cries dramatically for never receiving a second helping of his hot dessert, ruthlessly parasitizing the bribed coupons from the undercover executive, Luke drags the group to a luxury restaurant and magically fries a robot waiter and a door lock just by breathing near them, puffing out his chest to swear it's the work of his terrifying inner demon. While the loafers eat, the cleaning maniac Buff Grimes spies on them through cameras, thirsty for dirty revenge after being humiliated by Roman. He sends a scary drone to kidnap the girl, but the machine is as useless as its owner and captures Luke by mistake, locking the idiot in a cage in the dishwashing room. Completely consumed by his own narcissistic schizophrenia, Luke swears up and down that Grimes plans to perform experimental surgery on him to create a super dual human. Realizing that the boy's power to fry electronics is mysteriously not working, the psychopathic janitor releases him to start an oppressive brawl. Grimes dons a totally fake halo and begins to shamelessly abuse his modified disc, manipulating the top of his deck in a filthy card laundry scheme. He forces poor Luke to draw cardboard non-stop until his deck is almost empty, setting the stage to win the duel by deck out. Meanwhile, Yuga and the others discover while watching the screens that Luke's great and dark demon was just his counterfeit wristwatch short-circuiting modern local machinery. In an embarrassing scene, the team tries to summon their own demons using the blessed watch to break the janitor's system, only to suffer the greatest shame of their short lives when absolutely nothing happens. Even after discovering his superpowers were a sham, Luke flaunts a criminal level of confidence, drowns his frustrations, and cleans the field's filth with a spell of absolute draconian pressure. He vomits 3 of his most broken dragons simultaneously into the arena, shoving a destructive triple combo of pure humiliation straight into the cleaning maniac's fragile pride.
4 strike! Oh no!
To crown the historic embarrassment, Grimes accidentally leaks the location of the security door to Yuga and falls screaming down a humiliating trapdoor, paving the macabre tunnel straight to the dreaded final boss. Completely ignoring the risk of total annihilation, our troop crosses the so-called Gate of Curiosity, only to find the deadliest labyrinth of all, a street of overpriced commerce with a traditional Japanese aesthetic and robots trying to shove junk down your throat. Drones dressed as market aunties begin harassing the kids, hawking trinkets with the Providence seal. Luke is forced to choke down a gruesome candied apple and inhale a brutally sweet hot dog. When he tries to complain about the schizophrenic cuisine, the robots essentially give him the finger, philosophizing that flavor is entirely dependent on whoever is shoving the food into their mouth. While the protagonist has a hallucinogenic epiphany, thinking he's finally understood the villain's brilliant mind after staring at a convenience store, Nail himself is busy being harassed by the corporate high brass. A pack of suits tries to fire the boy on the spot, but he obliterates the apathetic corporate drones in an off-screen duel, sweeping the suits straight into the HR trash bin. After knocking on the master's door, Yuga arrives with his chest puffed out, itching to play his cards, and summons Seven's Road Magician to try and squeeze a drop of emotion out of the apathetic kid. But Nail spent the entire night tearing apart our heroic inventor's little game. Exploiting a gaping hole that the idiot Yuga left in his own source code, Nail initiates his digital vengeance. Clearing his hand to set up the perfect humiliation, he fuses 3 cards at once and ejects something unthinkable into the arena. The ultimate aberration known as Yggdrago the Sky Emperor emerges as a colossal 3-headed dragon, thick enough to make any duelist recoil in terror. Without a shred of mercy, the creature vomits a triple apocalyptic laser that instantly melts the boy's front line. Yuga is swallowed by the flames, screaming in despair as his life points are brutally pulverized, zeroing out his pride in a single crushing blow courtesy of the server's newest legal cheat.
Oh no, Yuga!
With his knees in the dust and his ego in tatters, the useless protagonist discovers the hard way that his own open-source code was shoved down his throat by Nail to create maximum summoning. Completely in tears and with another penalty added to the group's account, the nerd sobs his eyes out and flees to the pretentious Roa's apartment, spending the afternoon on the sofa drinking bitter hot chocolate like a teenager in the middle of a messy breakup. While the leader of the troop licks his wounds, his outsourced lackeys use their collective single brain cell to hunt for some hack that can break Nail's oppressive strategy. They storm the underground chamber of the mystic hologram man, Otis, thirsty for answers. Taking advantage of the poor sap's fragility, the sadistic hologram splits into 3 colored clones and summons the trio to a simultaneous triple brawl. In an act of classic extortion, he warns them that all 3 will take massive penalties if they accept, win or lose, just out of their blind loyalty to Yuga. Driven by pity for their crushed friend, the 3 clowns embrace the chaos. Otis wastes no time rubbing his advantage in their faces by summoning 3 formidable red eyes black dragons at once, spewing a dark fire devastation that thrashes the kids, stripping away more than half their health in an instant. But never underestimate side characters desperate for a moral victory. Shifting gears, Gavin wagers his own sanity, losing almost all his life points just to pump up his card stats, while Roman and Luke engage primal aggression mode. In an insane sequence, the 3 vomit out a direct submission combo that blasts the Mystic Gentleman's life bars into outer space.
Magnificent.
After taking a beating, the clones evaporate, leaving a nauseatingly cliché message saying the secret was inside them all along. On the verge of a tragic permanent ban with 5 penalties on their backs, they rush straight to the lab and throw it in Yuga's teary face. They risked their entire accounts just to boost his morale, forcing the defeated inventor to finally get off his butt and honor his friend's suicidal sacrifice. The squad of doomed losers casually strolls through Goha Corp headquarters, drooling over museum holograms while they are literally 1 loss away from eternal banishment. The blockhead Luke thinks they went there for cafeteria food, but the useless protagonist just wants to admire the plastic gods of dueling before his account is sunk into oblivion. The sightseeing tour is brutally interrupted when Nail appears, parading in his massage chair with a god complex, summoning the brats to a final confrontation in the middle of the museum crowd. The duel erupts, and Yuga raises a pathetic defensive wall, forcing Nail to stop playing around and dump his arsenal into the graveyard to trigger true destruction. In an overpriced light show, Nail conjures a maximum summon and spits Yggdrago onto the field, and tosses the giant Blue Eyes white dragon model into the trash by sheer force of humiliation. Taking a Homeric beating from the fire and blizzard spitting lizard, Yuga is completely cornered. Knowing his standard cards won't cut it, the nerd decides to embrace real-time cybercrime. He hacks his own dual disk mid-match, but the system demands more memory space, and he decides to sacrifice his own friend's ID cards. Without hesitating, he shoves Luke, Gavin, and Roman's accounts into the processor, wagering their digital lives on the basis of emotional blackmail. The equipment begins to fry violently from the illegal jury rigging until the annoying drone Kaizo jumps into the USB port and offers himself as a sacrifice, scorching his entire memory to stabilize the scam. Sustained by hardware fraud and romantic piracy, Yuga finally draws his custom cards and summons Supreme Machine Magnum Overlord, an extravagant giant mecha that bursts through the skies to face Nail's dragon in a holographic measuring contest. With 2 colossal monsters rubbing their absurd proportions in the face of all Goha City, the cardboard kaiju clash truly begins. Yuga frantically pumps up his robot's strength to crush his opponent, but Nail activates a cowardly trap, nullifying the damage and blowing the explosion back into the protagonist's face.
That I did.
Without giving him room to breathe, the prodigy fattens his Yggdrago to a terrifying 6,000 attack and vomits a triple flame hellscape. To avoid becoming instant charcoal, Yuga cries his way into a trap and hastily disassembles his mecha into its 3 original parts, dodging annihilation in the most humiliating way possible. Scenting cowardice, Nail brutalizes the boy's strategy, forcing him to return his entire hand to the deck, effectively deleting maximum summoning from the game. Desperate, Yuga unearths Seven's Road Magician and launches a suicide attack against the dragon. Nail laughs at the pathetic attempt, absorbs the damage to heal his life back to full, and swallows Yuga's field whole, leaving the boy on his knees with a measly 100 life points, teetering on the edge of an existential grave. Just when the end feels inevitable, a ridiculous phenomenon takes over Goha. Every bored and needy kid in the city decides to publicly scream that they are part of Yuga's group. In a bizarre surge of collective digital suicide, the army of brats willingly accepts 5 penalties on their child accounts just to polish the protagonist's ego. Fueled by this disturbing cult of personality, Yuga begins digging through his deck like a rabid dog, using every draw spell he can find. Defying every law of statistics, he sucks his 3 maximum cards back into his hand, fuses the mechanical trinity once more, and kicks the bucket with a final effect. Using the life point difference, the mecha undergoes an anabolic mutation until it hits 9,400 attack, ripping Yggdrago in half with a massive sword of light and erasing Nail's existence in a single violent strike. At nightfall, Nail magically restores the late Kaizo's files and shocks the losers by showing he had shoved 5 penalties onto his own account before the match even started, melodramatically sacrificing his life for the concept of justice. In his final breath of hacker mercy, he clears the criminal record of Yuga's team before vanishing from the map, making way for a trio of sinister girls who appear out of nowhere, swearing to destroy everything the group just fought to save. The self-proclaimed king of duels decides the school needs a militarized cult of personality and hijacks the sacred student council room to create the Luke Club, decorating the place with his beloved plush dragons to an alarming degree of loneliness. Meanwhile, over at the evil megacorporation, Nail tries to act like a benevolent intellectual regarding rush duels, but President Goha just laughs in his face, declaring total war against a bunch of kids playing cards. Back at school, Yuga experiences poetic flashbacks on the roof before the useless drone Kaizo interrupts the mood by reporting Luke's real estate crime. Seeing the boy sitting on a fake throne demanding pathetic submission, Roman, Gavin, and Yuga decline the invitation to massage his ego and leave him in the trash heap of his own glory. Desperate for any crumb of attention, the pint-sized dictator goes on a crusade hunting for members. He invades baseball, basketball, and football practices, defying the laws of physics with titanic dunks and mass destruction kicks, only for the athletes to ignore his card shilling and beg him to use that superhuman vigor in a real sport. Rejected by absolutely everyone and going completely stir-crazy, the boy returns to the club and does the saddest thing in the universe. He plays a rush duel entirely by himself, running like an idiot from one side of the table to the other.
Is that supposed to scare me? If it doesn't, it really should, bro. You're up. First off.
In the middle of this solitary game, he slams his hip into the corner of the table, drops his card, and enters a hallucinatory trance where he must face a dark emo clone of himself amidst glowing ruins. Trapped in his own narcissistic delusion, Luke takes a beating from his schizophrenia clone, but draws a ridiculously overpowered illusion dragon from the ether that massacres his alternative personality, allowing him to wake up laughing at the ceiling. Yuga and the gang catch the madman talking to the wall, but they admire his new stolen card so much that they decide to make the paperwork official and join the group, obliterating their friend's ego by renaming the sect simply to the Rush Duel Club. Thirsty for glory in a mysterious newly announced tournament, the maniac Luke drags his naive pawns to an abusive training camp in the middle of nowhere. To rub salt in Kaizo's digital wounds, the god-complex massage chair known as Seat Bastion appears out of thin air, claiming to have 26 diplomas to legally serve as the excursion's faculty supervisor. Once at the camp, things spiral out of control, and Coach Luke imposes a bizarre military regime involving chasing chickens and doing luck-based push-ups, causing Roman to collapse from exhaustion and throw in the towel at the first breath. Fleeing this circus of child sweat, Yuga wanders into the woods and finds a newcomer named Asana crying over her stuck excavator. Using his elite manual talents, the protagonist shoves his hands straight into the girl's machine, fixes the problem in 2 moves, and earns an exciting ride on the back of her heavy cavalry. Meanwhile, night falls and true domestic chaos erupts at the lodge when Roman and the raw fish-obsessed Sushiko start a deadly civil war over the TV remote. In a bloody duel to decide the programming, Roman tries her classic masochistic tactic of draining her own life points, but the sushi girl sabotages the strategy by shoving thick rolls of tuna and flying cucumbers down the rocker's throat to force her life bar back up. Gagging on all that wedged food, Roman snaps and summons her apocalyptic guitarist to annihilate her opponent. The carnage only stops when Luke accidentally turns on the TV, revealing that Roman's idol singer is going to star in the very same fish-focused detective show Sushiko wanted to watch. Completely disarmed by hypocrisy and distracted by the screen's glow, Roman takes a brutal thrashing from a colossal carb-heavy sushi angel and loses miserably. Resolving their differences in a pathetic manner, they all sit down greedily to devour a monstrous piece of roasted meat, while Asana, mysteriously mounted on her tractor under the full moon, spies on the campers from afar like a high-end motorized stalker. The child torture camp continues, and the gang wakes up surrounded by a colossal trench that looks more like an asteroid crater. As if the isolation weren't enough, the oxygen thief Luke has swallowed every last gram of food in the cabin, leaving everyone on the brink of starvation. Demonstrating his vast empathy, Yuga ties his cybernetic partner Kaizo with vulgar rubber bands and hurls the robot down the cliff just to measure the depth of the fall, ordering the hunk of junk to go fetch help from administration afterward. While the idiots melt from hunger, the ninja twins Rain and Reno run through the forest playing hero, with Rain secretly breaking into a cold sweat just thinking about Yuga's sweet omelet recipes. But the romantic fantasy is brutally interrupted when they stumble upon a mining operation run by the Heavy Cavalry Management Club. The squad leader is Gavin, a kid who swears he's in the 6th grade but has the physique of a war veteran with 3 divorces and a backhoe. To prove his heavy machinery is superior to the girl's weeds, Gavin challenges Rain to a duel atop his own tractor. Rain tries to play the professional by summoning her shadow flowers while her brother holds her cards, but the fake senior citizen activates his mechanical drill mandrel, vomiting dirt into the air and forcing the girl's plants to expose their bulbs shamelessly. Gavin arrogantly confesses that the excavation serves to annihilate rush dueling, and in a surge of blue-collar masculinity, he slams his machine's giant drill into Rain's barriers, zeroing her life points and forcing the twins to become slaves to the tractor fan club. Back at the cabin, the losing protagonists are already licking the tables in hunger when they are ironically rescued by the same lunatic construction workers who just kidnapped their friends. Gavin grins awkwardly, swearing he didn't see any ninjas on the way, while Kaizo takes a merciless beating from the team after forming a ridiculous bromance with Seat Bastion the chair and simply forgetting to call for rescue. Taking a mental vacation from reality, the student council president swallows the excuse that the twins vanished to enjoy some hot springs. But the real collapse happens when the functionally illiterate Luke comes skipping in with a tournament form, and to the surprise of 0 people, the moron can't read and has signed the group up for a year-long classical music competition. Since quitting would cost a bizarre $66,000 fine, the band of bankrupts crawls humiliated to the music club begging for help. Arriving there, they are greeted by karate mannequins and the appearance of a psychopathic girl holding a giant silver bassoon. This is Tiger, Luke's feared older sister, who demonstrates her family affection by using the sheer force of her breath to hurl her useless brother against the wall. Unable to resist seeing a dominant woman skillfully handling such a long instrument, Yuga draws his disc and challenges the musical master. In the arena, Tiger proves to be the undisputed queen of blowing and suction. Filling her back row with her sonic princesses, she inhales like an industrial vacuum to send cards to the graveyard and pump up her monster's attacks. When Yuga tries to fight back, Tiger summons a muscular demon maestro, binds the boy's traps in humiliating chains, and fires a concentrated jet of notes that rips through Yuga's field. Facing imminent doom, the boy prodigy draws his new conquering monster and begins intentionally trashing his own spells. This self-destructive play sucks the power from Tiger's sonic demon, allowing Yuga to land a fatal blow to finish the girl off. Admiring the boy's vibe, Tiger grins with flushed cheeks and forces the entire squad to train their embouchure by blowing into recorders mercilessly into the night, all while crushing Sebastian's dignity by sitting on the robot as if it were her private massage throne. Lugging heavy instruments through the brush, our pack of slackers arrives at a crumbling building that reeks of rats and despair. Trusting Sebastian's useless GPS, Luke decides to test the embouchure he learned during the hellish training with his psycho sister, blowing into his thick trombone with sickly pride. Ignoring common sense, they enter the school ruins only to kick down a door and find dozens of masked students playing Rush Duel in the dark. The supposed classical music tournament was just a ridiculous facade for an underground card championship led by Jenko, a disheveled boy who suddenly begins having withdrawal seizures from a lack of drawing colored cardboard. After snipping a pack of cards and calming down, the addict tells his tragic story of how he was humiliated and kicked out of Goha 6th's student council by the excavator gang, finding metaphorical refuge as an oppressed ant at the bottom of a pit. But Luke couldn't care less about the existential crisis of insects. Completely furious for having wasted his breath handling his sister's giant instrument for nothing, he shoves the trombone in his ear, deafens everyone, and challenges Janko to a bloody duel as revenge for making him blow in vain. In the arena, Janko proves to be the lord of the anthill, summoning gross, defenseless insects that mysteriously pump up on steroids thanks to the force of socialist collective action, shredding Luke's big dragons without mercy. Completely cornered by the march of the revolutionary ants, Luke's smooth brain triggers extreme violence mode. He spits Insurrection Dragon onto the field, injects power by sacrificing his own graveyard trash, and transforms his monster into a 4,200 attack roped-up beast. To the colony's horror, Luke fires a blast of brutal chaos that disintegrates the insects all at once, sending Janko back to the hole he crawled out of. But as the idiots celebrate their victory, the ground begins to shake violently, and the hideout walls are brutally smashed by heavy machinery ready to bury everyone's joy. Swallowing dust and dignity, our squad of losers watches in shock as a fleet of excavators tears down the hideout wall. From the rubble emerges Asana, the sociopathic heiress and heavy machinery fanatic, stroking the chassis and hydraulic pumps of her favorite tractor with an intimacy that borders on disturbing. Revealing herself as openly prejudiced against talkative robots, the socialite demotes Kaizo and Sebastian to the trash while preaching that altering the sacred rules of the corporate card game is an unforgivable blasphemy. Incapable of taking no for an answer, Yuga challenges the tractor princess to a duel. Mounted on her giant excavation toy, Asana summons construction worms and transforms the arena into a peaceful mountaintop, only to run over Yuga's magicians without ceremony. Grinning like a maniac, the useless protagonist returns the favor by pumping up his precious Seven's Road magician, which slices through the debutante's metal worms with gusto. But the girl wasn't there for gardening. Drawing 3 cards at once, she vomits a colossal mass excavation aberration onto the field, a maximum monster with a dragon's face and a tractor complex. In an act of pure environmental brutality, Asana orders her machine to devour and destroy her own perfect field spell, just to fatten its attack points to an absurd 4,700. With a single crushing gear-driven charge, Yuga is wiped off the map and laid out miserably on the floor. As a prize for the humiliation, Asana collects the debt by sentencing the loser's entire friend circle to a compulsory transfer to the disciplinary dictatorship of Goha 6th Elementary, where Gavin finds his precious ninjas mopping floors in slave labor. Far away contemplating the city sits the implacable President Goha, but beneath that demonic helmet is just Mimi, the 37-year-old failure of a mother who put on a bizarre robotic hat because the previous president fainted from stress. Electrocuted and held hostage by her own cybernetic outfit, she now laughs wickedly at the top of the world, while having absolutely no idea of the student catastrophe she just authorized. Our squad of losers finds out the hard way that transferring to Goha number 6 involves a 5 a.m. wake-up call for literal slave labor at a construction site. While Galleon forces the kids to scale mountains, Gavin suffers a pathetic mental breakdown, twitching in agony over the loss of his beloved student council president title, until Rain slaps some sense back into his malfunctioning brain.
With all due respect, sir, if you go to pieces, we'll never get...
Piecing together the few synapses the group has left, Yuga and Luke deduce that the Heavy Cavalry Club orchestrated this ambush purely to dig up maximum cards in the school's backyard, while the failed mother Mimi gets scolded by her own cybernetic hat for letting Asana merely observe the targets instead of crushing them. Our useless green drone Kaizo appears in a wig to smuggle in some hope. The excitement is short-lived when Galleon blocks the exit atop his walking drill, forcing a depressed Gavin to duel for his political freedom. The debris-covered brute wastes no time, driving his boring bit straight into Gavin's life points. Gavin falls to his knees, crying through another presidential withdrawal crisis. When Galleon brings out his heavy metal heavy hitter and obliterates the stiff's defenses, things look grim for democracy. But finding the will to live from who knows where, Gavin activates his trap, cures his temporary dementia, and summons his majestic semi-ruler. With a surgical combo, he shreds the mechanical gorilla's defense and destroys Galleon's grandfather of tractors, who accepts defeat and crawls back to the scrap heap to cry. The humiliation has barely ended before Asana grabs the megaphone and rats out Yuga for using his pervy drone to help the girls on the slopes. As punishment, she banishes the boys to the abandoned dormitory, ignoring the fact that our rule-breaking protagonist just broke into a manic grin, because that forgotten dungeon happens to be the main entrance to the excavation club's underground vaults. Exiled to a crumbling dormitory, our protagonist sweat through useless digging under the watchful eye of Galleon, who now spends his days intimately stroking an old shovel in a depressing state of mechanical withdrawal. But Yuga's true plan is already in motion. He has dispatched his two robotic trash cans, Kaizo and Sebastian, on a secret mission to beg for answers at Nail's base. The two metal idiots engage in a petty race through the forest until the rain forces them into a damp cave, where a strange alien named Terra clocks in, promising to pulverize the duo. Deeply offended by the audacity of an organic woman trying to compete with his mechanical glutes, the arrogant armchair accepts the duel to prove who provides the better massage. Sebastian opens the set by vomiting an entire collection of passive chairs with zero attack, prepping his massive throne to dominate the alien. However, Terra prefers a high-impact approach, summoning magma monstrosities to shove their hot, throbbing thumbs deep into the armchair's pressure points, debuffing his stats until he's vulnerable to her advances. Refusing to bow his head, Sebastian recycles all his graveyard junk, pumps his attack to the max, and crushes the girl's volcanic aberrations with a disastrous charge. Revenge is swift and merciless. With her majestic thermal machine, Terra forcibly pierces the talkative chair's defenses with a spine-shattering technique, obliterating every cushion on the field before blasting Sebastian into the stone wall with brute force. Short-circuiting and on the brink of death, the useless Seat smiles diabolically, revealing he took the beating on purpose, just to open a gap for Kaizo to fly into Nail's magic trash bin. Back at school, the heavy cavalry princess is shocked by her own operational failure, and decides to wager her beloved club on a bloody ultimatum against rush duels. But Yuga doesn't give a damn about her drama. Taking advantage of the chaos, the gang penetrates deep, uninvited, into the darkest, most secret-riddled crevices of the mine. The city was enjoying its stagnant peace until a rogue tractor began dismantling everything in its path. Meanwhile, underground, our protagonists are still walking in circles like headless chickens. Luke tries to build scrap monsters that immediately disintegrate, proving his manual labor skills are as useful as his brain. Dying of thirst, Roman almost gulps down some radioactive puddle water before Tracker emerges from the shadows with potable supplies. Kaizo tries to steal the credit, demanding the rocker girl praise him, only to be beaten back by a wall of indifference. He then projects a message from Nail, revealing that the snot-nosed Tracker is literally their human GPS to the secrets of the Maximums. On the surface, Caterpillar, a masked mechanical lunatic, arrives at Yuga's lab to decimate the building. The post-apocalyptic club tries to play defense squad, but the nutjob uses his oversized tools to strip everyone's clothes off in seconds, leaving the kids semi-naked and running in shame. Just as the journalism club is about to be flattened in the name of a suicidal headline, a giant bassoon falls from the sky like a divine dart. Tiger appears in all her intimidating glory, ready to punish the boy in a frantic card battle. Caterpillar summons a fleet of heavy machinery disguised as zoo animals, lowering everyone's attack and hiding behind a cowardly defense of steel elephants and hippos. But Tiger has no time for nonsense. Using breeding techniques that would make a bootleg demon slayer jealous, she blows into her long instrument so hard her monster swallows musical steroids. Completely ignoring the opponent's armored wall, she drives massive piercing damage into Caterpillar's face, obliterating the field and blowing the boy backward. Galleon pops out of a hole like an indignant mole, scolds his colleague for acting without Asana's permission, and they both bail. Meanwhile, in the cave, Tracker's nose short-circuits, and he unleashes a sneeze so absurd it explodes the stone wall, revealing a bizarre hexagonal corridor hidden deep within the earth. In the dark depths, Shubel trains with his tactical pigeon while Galleon literally breaks through the wall with a pickaxe, coughing his lungs out just for a chance to crush Yuga first. As the troop walks through the unexplored halls, Rain slips. The protagonist catches her, immediately triggering the girl's romantic schizophrenia. She begins to see the invention boy as a Prince Charming ready to fill her life with sugary smiles. Upon arriving at the heavy cavalry's underground coliseum, the group encounters Galleon, who tries to deliver an intimidating speech before simply passing out from exhaustion, muttering delusions of submission to his beloved Asana. Rain grabs the fallen rival's broad body, has another effective psychotic break, and decides the only sensible move is to betray all her friends and duel in the enemy's place. Unable to stomach the secondhand embarrassment generated by his own twin sister, Reno takes it upon himself to smack some sanity into her skull. Luke tries to help by holding the flower ninja's cards while covering his face with a dark cloth, rendering him functionally blind and absolutely useless for the entire confrontation. The duel turns into a soap opera focused on weeds. Rain vomits ninja plants onto the field while suffering internally from the illusion that Yuga and Galleon are fighting a bloody war for her heart. Reno, exhausted from living with a lunatic, destroys his sister's mental barriers by publicly exposing her observation diary containing an unbelievable 73 different romantic targets. The humiliation reaches stratospheric levels as the two trade devastating attacks fueled by shame. When the field becomes a total mess of crushed petals, Reno triggers a suicidal trap that freezes everything, draining both their life bars to zero in a pathetic, perfectly symmetrical draw.
We both also take 500 points of damage.
The shock deactivates Rain's blindness, and the siblings make peace, promising to do better. The existential crisis seems resolved, until Roman makes the mistake of touching Reno's shoulder to compliment him. The boy's brain melts instantly, processing his own delusional lens of passion for the hungry rocker, proving that pathologically thirstiness is a hereditary trait. Before this terrible new romance can worsen, Shubel interrupts the pathetic scene to announce that the draw requires one more punitive duel. Completely ignoring the twins' pathetic draw, Luke tries to project courage, but nearly eats dirt when an armed pigeon makes him hallucinate with his eyes wide open, thinking he's back in his normal school routine, proving his brain has officially redlined. Shubel realizes his rival's reasoning is slower than dial-up internet and decides to troll him without limits. He uses imaginary shoelaces, threats of alien abduction, and soap opera plot twists to trick his victim repeatedly, announcing that the true opponent this round is literally his one-eyed pet bird, Pigeon. The match becomes a spectacle of avian humiliation. The pigeon, who apparently masters the game better than you master your adult life, begins vomiting traps onto the field while dropping explosive birds into Luke's lap. Traumatized by the sheer rudeness of the tactical chicken's face-down cards, Luke suffers a mental collapse, curling up on the floor like a depressed pill bug and rolling in his own endless delusions. Trapped in an illusory dungeon, he hallucinates Yuga's voice whispering that dealing with traps is a turn-on, and that not knowing the danger of the hole is the best part of the experience. Inspired by this highly questionable philosophy, Luke wakes up drooling confidence, kicks his mental bucket, and starts slamming brutal dragons onto the table. To annihilate the flying pest, he summons an irresistibly cute baby dragon, drains the enemy bird's stats to nothing, and fires a devastating energy blast that nearly plucks the bird's feathers off. Reduced to pigeon dust, Pigetrap tries to assassinate Shubel with dramatic pecks, which triggers a schizophrenic flashback of them almost freezing to death together in the snow, all serving as an excuse for them to hug and wail in tears.
Had to fight. I never want you to leave my side. I love you too. Let's never fight again.
Closing the circus, Luke throws his last two neurons away and starts cooing like a pigeon too, disgusting all his friends and making it clear that no one there is remotely normal. The troop of slackers continues to grope through the cold underground dungeons until Tracker lets out a radioactive sneeze capable of unearthing the city's biggest corporate secret right under their shiny noses. The magic snot reveals old duel discs buried in the dirt. With the red light of epiphany hitting them hard, the team quickly realizes these filthy relics hide electronic scrap with old IDs, exactly the junk needed to generate the long, seductively thick maximum monsters. At that exact moment of discovery, Asana appears at the edge of the precipice mounted on her giant backhoe, ready to single-handedly protect the massive hole her club blindly idolizes as tradition. She argues those cards are begging for a natural death and that trying to inject data into them without crumbling everything is a pathological delusion. However, thirsty to bury bury the kid's format once and for all, Asana drags Yuga into a confrontation, promising to wipe Rush duels from existence if she wins. She goes on the offensive and immediately warps reality to summon her colossal oppressive machine, Worm Excavator, right in the protagonist's face. Yuga somehow swallows the crushing damage using dirty reduction tactics to survive the first round. Seeking the thrill of crushing a solid wall, Asana begs Yuga to pull out the brutal monster he took from Nail. The protagonist, proud and stubborn as ever, refuses to use someone else's handouts, betting everything on the decrepit old circuits recently sneezed out of the dust pile. Daring the ridiculous, he scrapes his limit and extracts new IDs with pure cosmic favoritism, uniting his rusted colossi into the formidable Supreme Machine Magnum Overlord.
Supreme Machine Magnum Overlord!
The cave collapses into a digital kaiju wrestling ring. Yuga pumps his robot full of dangerous steroids until it explodes with 5,800 points of pure cybernetic terror. Refusing to swallow this massive outburst, Asana sacrifices pieces from her hand to decimate the opponent's fury, equalizing their sizes so they can rub their monstrous plastic together in a perfectly symmetrical blind clash. The drama turns into a structural catastrophe when both realize that recycling e-waste is a scam. The cards themselves begin to physically rot on their dual discs. The epic brawl becomes a test of raw prayer to see whose holographic dysfunction fails first, crumbling toward final poetic glory. The dust settles, and the biblical clash between the two mountains of virtual plastic continues. But recycling digital trash has its price. Both maximum monsters begin to darken and crumble like stale bread until they evaporate in a catastrophic explosion that accomplishes absolutely nothing, resulting in an anticlimactic technical draw. The useless protagonist and the excavator addict watch their rarest cards turn to charcoal, while the idiot Luke weeps copiously, promising to fix the destroyed magic with scotch tape and school glue. Ignoring the card funeral, Asana brings out Constructor Worm Buildragon to slam the table and beat the boy down. But true drama swallows the field when the bucket of bolts Asana is sitting on, affectionately called R6, starts leaking oil and spitting smoke like a gut-shot tractor. The girl breaks down in tears, confessing that Goha Enterprises discontinued her family's parts production, and tainting it with third-party gears would be the ultimate offense to her fanatical club's tradition. Meanwhile, at the corporate penthouse, the 37-year-old lowly president falls off her desk upon discovering that Asana's destructive intentions were purely a desperate cry for sponsorship. The excavator continues its relentless attack, forcing the heavy cavalry gang to intervene with their own lean bodies and pliers to stop the motorized chair from launching Asana into orbit. Pulling divine loyalty out of his pocket, Yuga decides to punish the drama by summoning the formidable steel mech Lord Mirror Innovator. Playing her trump card, Asana prohibits machine-type attacks, believing she has sealed the boy's fate. However, with peak narrative audacity, Yuga emits a shimmering beam that transforms his metal brute into a glittery wizard, bypassing the magical restriction, cannibalizing the stats of every magical corpse in the graveyard, and swallowing the enemy dragon's attack like an anabolic boost. The robot fires an obliterating rainbow beam that zeroes Asana and blows the final screws out of the poor R6.
Stand together!
As a consolation prize for destroying her faith, Yuga smashes through a mysterious wall to reveal the ancestral R0 model, rubbing it in everyone's faces that even her great-grandfather used illegal mechanical jury rigs to build his gear. Swallowing her tears and broken tradition, Asana accepts modernity, frees the school from the anti-fun dictatorship, and leaves Goha's top brass sweating over the uncontrolled multiplication of cards in the playgrounds. Goha's high command enters a state of absolute panic as the Rush Duel plague devours the minds of every child in the city. The brilliant solution from a failed suit is to force the legendary guitarist Princess G to sing the most embarrassing corporate song of all time. Being a sane rock star, she refuses to record this sonic atrocity and loses her contract in the same millisecond, telling her manager to go to hell before peeling out on her high-powered motorcycle. At school, Roman stumbles upon the firing gossip and has a dramatic meltdown, blaming Yuga's pathetic invention for killing the future of music in the universe. class. At that exact moment of mourning, a substitute teacher with Coke bottle glasses named Gwendolyn trips over her own shadow and kisses the cold floor. Luke's damaged brain miraculously functions for half a second to decipher that the clumsy woman is the musical heroine in disguise, but everyone ignores his usual clairvoyance. Consumed by egocentric melancholy, Roman announces she's burying her deck for good, but not before thrashing the protagonist in a humiliating farewell match on the roof. Plugging her guitar into the amp, the girl cruelly flushes her own life points down the drain, just so her virtual muses can scream into Yuga's battered eardrums. Maintaining his usual sociopathic calm, he retaliates by pulling out Savage Claw Tiger, shredding Roman's entire band with claw strikes, and reducing the brat's oxygen to a measly 300 GP. Just when hope crumbles at the building's edge, soft piano notes drift up from the floor below, hammered out by the nearsighted teacher who has given up on all discretion. Spurred by the acoustic epiphany, Roman fishes a miraculous sweet loli called Candy from the depths of her deck, subversively planted by the rock goddess. Sucking more life away, the psychotic rocker draws the perfect card, rejects her traumas, and drops the formidable prima guitarna and the aggressive espriti in an insane session of sonic roadkill dubbed Jam Style. The loud combo disintegrates Yuga's furry tiger into code confetti and sweeps his life points in an absurd green flash. Exhausted after beating a classmate with a magic speaker, Roman revokes her tearful retirement, deciding that screaming her own desires feels much better than repressing feelings. On the sidewalk, Gwendolyn sheds her useless employee disguise and accelerates into the sunset, knowing her true legacy was teaching a student how to crush boys using violent melodies. In the president's office, Mimi examines the galaxy's most diabolical plan to destroy rush duels, drafted in crayon by an employee with the mental capacity of a doorknob. Meanwhile, at school, despair reigns with rumors that the evil corporation has started printing official Maxima monsters. But true soap opera drama strikes when Rain decides to resign from the student council and abandon the Sugetsu style, leaving Gavin slack-jawed and heartbroken. Seizing the power vacuum, Luke self-proclaims as vice president and begins a dictatorship of questionable taste, bathing the entire school in blue paint and dunking Kaizo into a bucket to drown his electric delusions. Desperate to drag his ninja back, Gavin challenges her to a duel, but the girl's mind has completely fried. Dragged into hallucinations where she and her friends are saviors of the universe, she plants floral chaos in the arena, dropping a shadow lion on the field and neutering all of Gavin's ace monster's attack. She swears she's quitting because her mediocre presence prevents him from shining, a total ego-driven victim complex. Refusing to be thrown away like trash, Gavin pulls a majestic ice chicken called Isozark from the depths of his soul, absorbing the aura of the zero-attack losers in his graveyard. He turbocharges the frozen bird and shatters Rain's pathetic flowers, sweeping her life points along with her illusions. Despite losing and realizing Gavin has become a formidable man, Rain maintains her refusal, deciding that now she is the one who needs to cut the umbilical cord and grow up. To cap off the collective madness, a girl dressed as an ancestral ceramic vase appears on every screen in the city, orgasmically announcing Goha's official Rush Duel tournament, leaving the group with more questions than answers. The tournament announcement sets the city on fire, but the rules require three-person teams. Luke tries to recruit Yuga with the subtlety of a rhino, but the master of inventions rejects the offer flat out. Feeling betrayed like the protagonist of a cheap romance novel, Luke has a temper tantrum, leaves everyone behind and flees to the mountains to dig for maximum cards in the dirt. Arriving there and running into Asana and her excavator fan club, the boy discovers the cave has been invaded by a bunch of lunatics dressed as astronauts who taped Christmas lights to the ceiling to pretend they're in space, sweating like pigs inside giant spacesuits in a confined space. The hacks claim the cosmos commanded them to steal the relics. Since diplomacy isn't this group's strong suit, Luke faces off against the space otaku booster to earn the right to shove his shovel into the ground. The fake astronaut summons summons flying space turtles and throws a gravitational field spell in Luke's face, draining his dragon's strength until they look like scrawny lizards. But while being crushed in the simulated vacuum, Luke's hollow brain finally processes Yuga's absence. Thanks to some prior gossip from Gavin and Roman, they conclude the protagonist refused to join specifically so the singer could focus on music, the suit on his traditions, and so Luke could rub his king title in society's face without sharing the spotlight. Drunk on the sappy power of friendship, Luke spits in the face of science, draws a buffed-up dragon, annihilates the opponent's space by raising a jagged mountain, and incinerates the galactic turtles, sending the bogus cosmonauts back to orbit with 0 life points. Everyone ends up digging holes together like hyperactive toddlers. Back at the lab without having found any valuable junk, Luke accepts Yuga as the official team mascot, aggressively slapping the poor kid's knees in a bizarre and uncomfortable act of extreme adoration. The Goha Mega Corporation decides to brainwash the masses by announcing a massive official Rush Duel tournament, luring the entire city's population of background characters to the stadium. Our gossip-loving protagonist Yuga tries to play the humble card and refuses to participate, preferring to stay on the sidelines as a cheerleader, until he bumps into Mimi. She's currently breaking a cold sweat, trapped inside a president drone suit like a low-budget cosplayer trying to hide her identity. Meanwhile, the tournament's strict system bans a pigeon from competing, crushing the bird's dreams and forcing Yuga to take Asana's spot on the heavy cavalry team, proving a protagonist can never just stay quiet on the bench. Suddenly, the hologram of the masked weirdo Otis pops out of nowhere, demanding an aggressive pedagogical duel to teach the true meaning of the tournament. He invokes the iconic summon skull to thrash Yuga with dark tornadoes on the very first turn. Yuga pretends the pain doesn't bother him and vomits his gang of colorful casters onto the field, having Seven's Road Witch and Seven's Road Magician clash their magical gear together to combo for over 4,000 attack points. He turns the old man's armored skull into bone dust, winning the duel with the pure essence of friendship power. Otis tries to deliver a deep, prophetic moral lesson about the future of cards, but he is immediately grabbed and dragged away by mall cop drones like a delusional trespasser. While the kids make rivalry promises for the tournament, completely ignoring the illegal arrest of a hologram, a group of bizarre suits nicknamed Goha 66 invades the city's underground mine, ready to cause the next big disaster you'll pretend to care about. The colossal Goha tournament finally begins its worldwide broadcast, with Mimi attempting to give a speech while publicly fighting her own robotic hat. However, the wannabe rock star Roa hijacks the spotlight, challenging the pint-sized president to a live duel in exchange for a private meeting with the prisoner, Otis. Mimi accepts, drooling over the prospect of VIP tickets, and activates a maximum security prison field. She summons sultry guards and the brutal dominatrix Diane Quito to bind Roa with mysterious handcuffs. Impatient with her slowness, the drone hacks the old lady's brain, taking full control of her body and forcing the summon of a dark cybernetic spider that literally perches on the dominatrix's head to slap the opponent twice per turn. Watching Roa get beaten down and his monsters suffocated by prison rules, his musical henchmen realize their lead singer is nothing more than a sociopath, using them as pawns. Confirming their suspicions, Roa ruthlessly buries his supposed friend's ace cards, brutally sacrificing them to summon the lethal Royal Rebels Doom Metal and obliterate the president's fetish field once and for all. Mimi takes a massive sonic beatdown and loses the duel screaming, coming to her senses just in time to find out Otis has already escaped his cell through the sewers. The musicians abandon Roa on stage for being a toxic narcissist, while the heavy cavalry kids flee the stadium in tears after discovering they need to save Asana from a new underground peril. Alone, abandoned, and bandless, Roa swallows his pride and accepts Yuga's outstretched hand. Yuga decides to throw competitive balance out the window and calls in the prodigy hacker Nail to complete the trio. Luke nearly has a stroke realizing the boys just assembled the most broken, cheap, and indigestible team in the history of the universe. Goha's massive tournament continues its global broadcast with Prioria, an announcer dressed like a fever dream, dictating elimination rules where whoever loses 7 times is sent to the pits. While Yuga's over-budget team, featuring the emo hacker Nail and the narcissist Roa, shreds opponents like meat, our useless protagonist Luke hangs around a ramen shop whimpering like a rejected ex just because he has no friends, and more importantly, no maximum card in his deck. To rub salt in the wound, Tracker invades the premises. The kid has dyed his hair blonde and is wearing more gold than a Vegas high roller, demanding a face-to-face duel with Yuga. In the arena, Tracker quickly reveals he's been looting the Sacred Mountain, excavating counterfeit Goha wallets to sell rare cards on the black market for fur coats and motel coupons, acting like a professional video game scalper. Using the power of savage capitalism, he vomits his own maximum summon onto the table, a 3-part Jurassic dinosaur monstrosity that threatens to make our nerd protagonist extinct. But just when all seems lost and Yuga is down to measly life points, the power of the script strikes again. Nail and Roa had secretly tucked their own maximum pieces into the boy's deck, and thanks to a blank card Yuga got from the excavator girl, he commits the greatest act of forgery ever seen. Yuga tampers with the system and summons Hyper Engine Vast Vulcan, an ignorant magma titan that incinerates the scalper's capitalist dinosaurs in seconds, shattering Tracker's life points. With his backside burning on the grass, the fake blonde cries and confesses he only managed to rob the mountain because he made a dirty deal with a mysterious geriatric gang called Goha 66, leaving a nagging doubt in the minds of our card-addicted team. Hunting for the retirement homes where the Goha 66 gang hides, Luke, Gavin, and Roman stumble upon a park infested with dual zombies, kids who lost so much in the tournament they lost their souls and now want to suck the life out of anyone still standing. Fortunately, the Journalism Club Extras and the Post-Apocalyptic Club show up to hold back the horde, allowing the trio to advance, only to fall face first into a Stonehenge made entirely of cake. Luke and Roman immediately devour every moist inch of the sugary structure like predators. From the top of the cakes rises the tournament announcer herself, Prioria, claiming to be a time traveler working as a lackey for Goha 66. Thirsty for revenge after the woman broke his noodle partner's heart, Grill Master Brisco takes the field, setting up a massive barbecue and summoning flaming cows against the announcer's deadly historical pastries. Prioria tries to bury the butcher with monstrous clay pots, reducing the boys' points to nearly 0. But Brisco simply cranks the oven to the max. He rubs pepper into the wound by turning her sweets into flammable fuel and summons a lethal skewer samurai that plunges its blade deep into the girl's treats, obliterating the enemy field in a grotesque explosion of fire and charcoal. Completely humiliated, and now crushing on the master of the flaming sausage, Prioria cries that her time is up and flees on a biscuit horse back to the past.
That's forever.
No, don't go!
I'll never forget you, Brisco, until the end of time!
Meanwhile, deep in the mountain, the queen of excavators, Asana, and her goons crawl through exhausted tunnels, only to face the geezers of Goha 66. These salaried seniors start doing workplace calisthenics in the middle of the dirt, complaining about joint pain and oozing deep hatred for collagen-filled youth, until Luke's aggressive sister drops from the ceiling. In a fit of musical rage, she blows a giant bassoon with such fury that the wind scatters the geriatrics through the tunnel like confetti. Back in the city, Yuga's broken trio looks for clues on full stomachs at the ramen shop, and Roa nearly has a heart attack finding the ancient legends of the dual king scrawled on the back wall, while the shop owner breaks into a sinister laugh, proving everyone in this city has skeletons in the closet. At the ramen stall, Roa tries to pry the king of duels gossip off the wall, but the old man behind the counter just laughs like a maniac at a comedy video on his phone. Rain drops from the ceiling, perfectly pointing a fish roll at the old man's face, accusing him of being a legend in disguise. The old-timer confesses the graffiti was just payment from a forgetful deadbeat. Meanwhile, in the mountains, Luke and Roman are so bloated after devouring every crumb of the cake Stonehenge that they break a rope bridge with their own weight, plummeting into a river to burn off the calories through ecological despair. When they finally crawl onto the bank, they stumble upon a bizarre stage where a hatch spits out the spherical robot Kaizo, now squeezed into a business businessman suit and thirsty for revenge after spending his life being treated like recyclable trash by the protagonist. Kaizo demands a bloodbath, promising to respec the entire group into his corporate slaves if he wins. He immediately turns the field into a HR nightmare, summoning corrupt executives and forcing Luke's dragons to work exhausting shifts before slashing everyone's attack salary and applying punitive layoffs. Seeing his beast suffer through relentless budget cuts and his own pride humiliated by the gears of capitalism, Luke short-circuits, hating being called a pawn of the system. He summons two massive beasts to crash the stock market, decimating the attack of Kaizo's corporate managers before blowing up the contractual traps and vaporizing the machine's life points in a brutal strike. The defeated drone fires up his thrusters to fly away crying, but Luke uses his tampered magical watch to shut down the bot's motor, slamming the robot face first into the ground. Under threat, the Tin Can confesses Goha 66's plan. They want to invade the main server of the dueling world, which is conveniently buried exactly where they are standing. A carrier pigeon lands perfectly on Yuga's shoulder, delivering the tea about the secret magic server hidden in the mountain, leaving self-proclaimed genius hacker Nail completely humiliated for not knowing his own company's secrets. Underground, the aggression is palpable when Tiger runs head-on into the excavator queen, Asana, revealing they were childhood best friends until an irreparable trauma on a snowy day. It all happened because the useless lump known as Luke fell asleep in the snow, forcing the girls to split up to find the brat. Tiger spent years cultivating a poisonous grudge, thinking Asana had abandoned the search to drink hot chocolate, and now she wants to settle it by smashing the girl's face in a high-tension duel. Tiger activates her musical beasts, blowing long instruments with destructive fury, while Asana buries her armored excavator dragons into the field. In the middle of the carnage, the Pigeon Boy invades the arena, confessing that Asana was never a traitor. She just got distracted rescuing him and his one-eyed pigeon from a bizarre avalanche while they were doing avian Amazon Prime deliveries. Asana refused to make excuses for her lateness, accepting the blame in silence. The grudge thaws instantly. Tiger forgives her beloved rival, and the wholesome vibes hit their peak, right up until Luke opens his mouth and gets chewed out for ruining the moment. Back to the holographic massacre. Asana cranks up the torque on her heavy machinery, drastically shrinking the power of Tiger's instrumental princesses and crushing the girl's life points with a direct tractor run to the gut.
Heavy-duty demolition!
They shake hands like true alphas, but idiot Luke decides to speak again, falling backward into the crumbling wall and revealing the Megacorp's secret box. The salaried geezers tremble with emotion until they open the Supreme server and find nothing but useless old junk with a ridiculous note. While the seniors weep over their failure, the city's giant screen announces the planetary tournament final will be a definitive bloodbath between Yuga's genius trio and the chaotic squad led by the idiot who just broke the mountain. While senior executive Mimi has a meltdown on a toilet seat, keeping an eye on the group of failed seniors underground, the original hacker troupe is sweating as they scrub the system data until it shines. But the real corporate spectacle at the stadium demands auditory blood, with the announcer declaring the tournament's grand finale between Yuga's genius trio and the unpredictable crew of the egocentric King Luke. The grand prize for risking their lives? The supreme title, a year's supply of spicy noodles, and some cheap cardboard crowns that Luke instantly covets like a toddler at a fast food joint. The first musical massacre pits Roman against her own cousin, the wannabe star Roa. The sad boy wastes no time with foreplay, spitting metal demons onto the field on the first turn, ruthlessly crushing the girl's life points and forcing her to her knees on the hard ground. But Roman has swallowed bigger pressures before, unleashing her cybernetic psychedelic cuties, ready to clash with her cousin's noise pollution. The big problem is, the spiky-haired rocker is more withered than a teenager without Wi-Fi, whimpering internally because he lost his backing band and doesn't know how to shine alone. The pathetic drama ends when Tyler and Toombs jump from the bleachers with the chaotic energy of repentant exes, taking their places behind the stage and inflating the singer's fragile ego. Roa starts pulsing heavy again, activating a spell that turns the field into a satanic rock show. He penetrates his cousin's defenses mercilessly with a focused attack, tearing her monsters in half and leaving her breathless in the danger zone. However, the pain only makes Roman thirstier. She reaches absolute ecstasy, demanding more pressure while sacrificing what she has to resurrect her prima guitarna from the depths of the graveyard. Injecting spells and a scandalous climax into her final combo, her monstrous girl boss swells with absurd strength, unleashing a colorful whirlwind that obliterates Roa's Dark Lord. The pop star kisses the canvas, Roman savors the ecstatic victory, and the overall score is tied, setting the perfect stage for the chaos of round 2. With the score deadlocked in a mortal tie, it's up to the straight-laced Gavin to face the cyber prodigy Nail with the weight of the universe on his shoulders. But the Honorable Student Council President thought it would be an absolutely genius move to throw centuries of tradition down the drain and try to innovate, appearing on the field dressed like a questionable neighborhood funk artist and calling himself DJ G. Roman nearly pulls her hair out from secondhand embarrassment while the idiot, wearing baggy pants and a tacky medallion, tries to drop some ridiculous rhymes for the stunned audience. Nail, who has better things to do than applaud a clown, doesn't waste a second of his precious screen time. He quickly dumps the required cards to the trash, summons his supreme dart deity, and spreads a three-headed cybernetic monstrosity with a colossal 4,000 attack across the field. The dragon Yggdrago spits an infernal storm without ceremony, melting the fake DJ's pathetic stage and sweeping the suit's life points nearly to 0 instantly. Trembling in his knockoff boots, the counselor suffers a sudden mystical delusion, seeing the image of his own great-great-grandfather emanating pure, silent disgust at his embarrassing fashion. Run over by ancestral common sense, Gavin discards the hideous rags that very second, pulling his sacred ninja kimono out from the back and reclaiming a sliver of his masculine dignity. With his nerves settled, he injects magical steroids into his favorite ancestral monster and hurls the poor thing at the young hacker's metallic beast. Of course, the rich kid has the perfect defense and laughs off Gavin's assault, subsequently commanding his supreme dragon to penetrate straight through the defenseless lines with 3 fire cannons. Total obliteration seems certain, but Gavin pulls his sacred suicide trigger. He activates the dark rains in a flash, redirecting the massive damage of the infernal flames to simultaneously destroy his own flesh and Nail's pale face. A massive explosion kicks both humiliated children off their platforms, ending the duel in a violent draw.
To defeat!
Watch out!
Rain crawls back, enchanted, into Gavin's traditional arms, and the cursed stage finally prepares the soil for the ultimate bloodbath between the show's owners. The score is tied at absolute 0, and now the weight of the universe falls on the shoulders of Yuga and Luke for the final clash. While the two brats climb floating pillars to massage their own egos, the rest of the gang breaks a cold sweat trying to understand the plans of the elderly hologram. Otis, the 37-year-old disguised as a child, Mimi, is freaking out at her super competent corporate subordinates, demanding to know who is hacking the system. On the field, Yuga draws his opening hand and has an internal stroke. The genius inventor bricked his hand worse than a rookie mason, holding nothing but high-level monsters. Trembling like a cold chihuahua, he burns 300 life points in an absurd act of desperation, just to vomit his Sevens Road magician onto the field and end his turn with his dignity in the trash. Luke, exuding that delicious arrogance, summons his multi-attacking Dragias and charges forward, drooling to crush his friend. But Yuga pulls a trap straight from the depths of the script, magically excavating exactly the pieces of his maximum monster to swallow the damage without breaking a sweat. On the next turn, the protagonist summons his giant volcanic robot and vomits magma onto the field, melting almost all of the self-proclaimed king's life points. But the kid has the gift of cheating rooted in his soul, pulling a literal slot machine out of thin air, getting disgustingly lucky, and gaining enough life to summon his new flying metallic aberration. In the middle of this children's cockfight, the holograms begin to flicker frantically. The lab rats point a super telescope at the sky and reveal the most stupid and primitive thing of the millennium. Goha's super advanced server is literally a giant drawing carved into the dirt of the moon to protect it against mutant asteroids, functioning like a colossal vinyl record. To make matters worse, dozens of space robots with drills are relentlessly shredding the lunar surface. In the stadium basement, the elderly Otis smiles proudly, hitting the universe's delete button and uninstalling rush duels in real time at the slowest cybernetic speed possible. General panic sets in when the intellectuals realize that their own card fight is deleting the game from the universe. The Heavy Machinery Club acts as a motorized tactical team and rams the basement door with their excavators, smashing Otis's computer. But the technological humiliation isn't enough to stop the catastrophe. The only logical way out would be to cancel the duel, but since we're dealing with two proud addicts, Yuga and Luke, Luke decide to keep playing cards while the world burns, and the crowd loses their sanity, egging the circus on. Luke has his dragon violently penetrate the defenses of Yuga's maximum, reducing the fire aberration to dust. Desperate, Yuga vomits a glowing army of innovators and electric knights onto the field, punching the self-proclaimed king of the hill until only a mere 100 points remain. But Luke refuses to stay in the coffin, summoning a third dragon from underground and ripping his classic Dragias from the graveyard to the nation's complete despair, sweeping the protagonist's defense to the core in an insane trance. Pressed against the wall, Yuga activates a dirty trap that ejects all of Luke's immense lizards back to his hand. The entire crowd is already screaming in celebration, but Luke twists the knife by activating the most disgusting counterattack of all. He uses Yuga's own effect as a channel to vomit his scaly fetish, Dragias, back onto the grass in that exact same second. With a brutal shock of pure malice, the creature swallows the entire field and fries Yuga into oblivion, securing the crown for Luke's massive head. While the brilliant, inventive mind cries, thrashing on the ground and punching the planet like a newborn in a crib. The holograms go out for good. The moon is wiped of technology. The game evaporates into the space vacuum. But in the middle of the funeral silence, Yuga's duel disc lights up from the grave and spits the duelists back into the system. It turns out the sociopath had treated his annoying flying drone, Kaizo, like garbage, stuffing the poor thing into the sewers to serve as a Duracell battery jammed into cables. With the cynical genius of cyber prodigy Nail redirecting the flying machines, they joined hundreds of junk satellites and alien debris in space to build a transformer. With a monolithic super robot physically indestructible and holding all the universe's data intact, the championship consecrates its crowned idiot and buries the world crisis, until the classic massive black shadow of a massive ship plunges the entire monument into darkness just to rub in your face that silence is never sacred for long. Yuga has a heroic delusion where his space robot penetrates a meteor with a giant energy blade, only to wake up headbutting his own lamp like a blind moron. While the literal code of their game colonizes the moon, the school hallways are empty because the ass Luke let his champion title go to his head, adopting the look of a tacky dictator in jeans, a toddler's plastic crown, and sunglasses to terrorize the club extras. Tired of the second-hand embarrassment, Roman and Gavin snitch on the tyrant so his own sister can dispatch his delusions of grandeur with some legalized beatings. In the middle of the mess, an oppressed student dressed from head to toe in a chameleon costume is cornered by Luke, receives the beautiful and ridiculous name Swirls, flees while tripping on his own tail, and ironically saves our brilliant protagonist's mind from the deadliest danger on Earth, a terrifying ladybug resting on Yuga's cheek. As a form of deep gratitude for having his life spared from a tiny insect, the boy drags the newcomer into the dark basement, invoking the hologram of the mysterious Otis and forcing the poor, chronically panicked child to duel in his place in a traumatizing combat. Like an excellent child pedagogue, Otis doesn't miss the chance to humiliate and pulls the enormous Blue Eyes White Dragon straight out of his virtual trousers to pulverize Swirl's cute, defenseless monsters in the first round. The massacre should have fried the kid's brain, but like a good masochist in training, his chest burns with the desire to take even more punishment. Following the team's cheap advice, he launches Seven's Road Whiz onto the mat, magically swallowing all of the Grand Albino Reptile's attack back to zero, and kicking the virtual old man back into oblivion, mopping the floor with the enemy's face. By the end of the day, the bully Luke's bravado completely crumbles as he breaks into a cold sweat when they stumble upon his dark past, unearthing his own painful amateur teenage comic book to wallow in the eternal darkness of school jokes, while our new lizard-suited mascot smiles timidly, accepting his role as the captive doorkeeper for the same psychopaths who almost sent him to the afterlife a few hours earlier. 6 sinister background characters at a lunar base decide to rig the giant robot with gym equipment to force the machine into self-destruction, signaling the genocide of rush dueling. Meanwhile, back on Earth, our useless protagonists are having a fully clothed hose water fight, only to be interrupted by corporate bureaucracy. Mimi is literally fired from her position as president by a flying drone that mocks her for being nothing more than a temporary placeholder. The sky darkens as a massive spacecraft shaped like a corporate logo parks over the school. 6 posh Power Ranger types reveal themselves as the true Goha presidents. They issue a brutal ultimatum to Yuga. He must win 6 duels, or the lunar robot will be pulverized, and he'll be forced into a life as a corporate 9-to-5 wage slave for Goha. Luke, proving he has a room temperature IQ, actually begs for a spot under the corporate corporate lash, but is completely ignored. The eldest brother of the troupe, Hiro, challenges Yuga to a cheap Mario Kart knockoff. Using his cowardly Deus Ex Machina powers, Nail raises a racetrack from the ground. Hiro speeds off on a luxury futuristic motorcycle, while Yuga opts to frantically ride his round, vibrating drone, Kaizo. They tear through the track as Hiro vomits a storm of wind-attribute monsters, placing a metallic alligator and a military eagle on the field to blow through Yuga's defenses in a dark tunnel. However, Yuga survives the humiliation and summons the classic Seven's Road Magician and an electric condor. Using pure protagonist magic, he melts the posh brat's windfield and blasts the alligator into orbit, crossing the finish line and crushing Hiro's life points.
Sparking strike!
The loser accepts his defeat with a relieved smile, ready to enjoy his freedom, but his sadistic younger brother, the pint-sized psychopath Yuo, intervenes via the big screen and strips Hiro of his title then and there. Hiro simply speeds away, happy he no longer has to clock in. Deep in the shadows, Yuo laughs to himself in his room, caressing a strange glowing card next to a bizarre drone. Meanwhile, the muscle-bound blue brother overdoes it on a treadmill so hard that the machinery overheats and explodes, sending the moron into a free fall straight into Earth's ocean. There, the idiot spends the night sharing romantic, wet glances with a friendly dolphin. The next day, our useless troupe is at school watching the giant robot perform forced Pilates when the fitness nut bursts in wearing nothing but a Speedo, piloting a wheeled canoe across the grass. Proving his sanity sank long before he did. He floods the entire school by pressing buttons to create an aquatic arena. While Yuga backs out because he can't swim, the egocentric Luke rips off his jacket and dives in headfirst, desperate to hog the spotlight. The duel goes terribly for our false king when the aquatic loon summons a colossal sea dragon that vomits liters of destruction across the field, drowning Luke's lackeys and leaving his life points in the gutter. But Luke sucks it up, slams his metallic dragon onto the table, and starts frying his opponent's nerves by melting the sea beast's attack points. Backed against a wall, the villain activates his Russian roulette trap, hoping to pull the field spell that would grant him a crushing victory, praying to the sea gods for a lucky draw. Unfortunately for him, the universe spits in his face by handing him a piece of useless junk. The humiliation peaks when that hunk of junk Kaizo accidentally bumps into the field's giant plug and drains the pool, leaving the villain drying in the sun like a piece of old salted cod at a street market. Luke delivers a merciless beatdown, incinerating the last drops of the villain's dignity and sending the Speedo-clad moron tumbling through the sky. Accepting his monumental failure, the loser hands back his presidential badge and falls back into the sea with open arms. Underground, the useless Mimi packs her things in tears, unaware that the very floor is opening its cybernetic maw to swallow what's left of her. The lunar robot continues its cringeworthy stretching routine in space for no apparent reason. The unemployed Hiro pops up at school just to warn everyone that his siblings are persistent psychopaths before vanishing into the dust to dodge the disciplinary committee. Immediately, the delusional Luke decides that enrolling the entire group of losers into a professional baseball tryout is a genius tactic, based on the rotten logic that learning to steal bases in sports will help him steal Yuga's seat on the board in the future. During the tryouts, Roman completely humiliates the boys, hitting balls all the way to the moon and proving she's the only one with an ounce of motor coordination. Her brilliance catches cosmic attention when the Goha mothership vomits a beam of light onto the field. Yuka, the unhinged eldest sister of the Goha family, emerges drenched in athletic sweat and challenges the guitarist to a rush duel in the middle of the dirt field. Luke forces some questionable sports-themed dragons into Roman's hand, and the brawl begins. Yuka smashes a ball into the protagonist's face using a deck focused on beefy, fire-breathing sluggers. Roman fires back by frantically chugging her blue protein shakes, topping off her life points before spitting Luke's buffed-up pitcher dragon onto the field. Blindly believing she was dominating the match after destroying Yuka's miracle slugger, Roman flashes an insolent smile, but Yuka laughs like a sociopath, activates an entire stadium of fire, revives her robust slugger monster from the graveyard, and pumps its power up to an absurd 5,400 attack. Yuka delivers a brutal swing with two bats at once, wiping Roman's dragon from existence and obliterating the girl's life points in one shot. With the score at 2-1 for the corporate brats, Yuga celebrates hysterically, chasing Roman across the field to force her into a contract signature. Ignoring the chase, Luke rips a base out of the ground to proclaim himself the literal king of stealing bases, only to return it while crying in terror of the rules. In the corporate depths, the sociopathic kid Yuo smiles wickedly in the dark as his pet drone finishes analyzing a card drenched in the pure essence of rule-breaking. Our glorious team of heroes focuses their attention on a phone to watch the colossal lunar robot do its eternal morning stretch, while Luke flaunts his useless plastic crown thinking his dual king title can actually pay the bills. The piece ends when zombies crawl into the student council room begging for help. The members of the Kendo Club took a massive beating from a rival and were screamed out of the gym by Tiger just because they had the audacity not to use her untouchable nickname. Sensing an opportunity to massage his white knight ego, Gavin signs the adoption papers for the wounded and agrees to fight in their place. Arriving at the perfectly empty gym, they encounter a mechanical nanny obsessed with etiquette and Yuran, the third Goha sibling, who exudes all the charisma of an anesthetized brick. The challenge is a Kendo rush duel, proving that playing cards wasn't enough. Now you have to take a bamboo stick to the face in real life. The old tin can with a cane narrates for Euron, while Gavin drives his spear home in a direct attack, ordering his partner to strike the drone's geriatric reflexes. But the machine shows no mercy, activating heavy traps on the sly and laying wood into the ribs of Gavin's aide. Just when the team thinks Euron is a passive useless load being carried by the robo-granny, Swirls drags another bloodied victim into the hall, revealing the colossal humiliation. Euron sliced through the entire competition alone with the coldness of a professional assassin. The quiet boy finally opens his eyes and his mouth, revealing he has already dissected every neurosis and strategy in Gavin's mind. Desperately trying to make a big brain play, Gavin swaps attack and defense on the field, hoping to shatter the villain's defensive strategy. However, Euron's mind was 100 miles ahead. He flips a card, swapping the numbers back, shatters Gavin's poor warrior's blade with a brutal counterattack, and secures a bamboo strike to the council president's forehead. Gavin is left unconscious on the floor, evening the score for the spoiled corporate heirs.
I've never faced a duelist like this. How are we ever going to defeat him?
The youngest brother, Yuo, skulks in the dark, wringing his hands and talking to decapitated mannequins, certain he will steal the empire from all his siblings at once. Parallel to this, Gavin organizes a useless defense committee at the club, where Mimi invades the room in a full disguise, setting up an overhead projector that definitely arrived on the same boat as the first Portuguese explorers. Their mental planning is interrupted by Luke orbiting the school with a stomach pregnant with 77 plates of sweaty gyoza. When he leans on Yuga's shoulder asking for explanations, the boy's head spins 180 degrees like The Exorcist, revealing that Luke was actually petting a bizarre dummy. Euro runs a red light, drifting his bike through the school hallways to the central courtyard, forcing everyone to look at a sky congested by the mothership dripping with the red light of an unwanted invasion. Yuo drops from the ceiling on red strings like he owns the circus, and pulls Yuga into an insane duel under a holographic tent. Yuga doesn't blink, pouring shiny warriors onto the stage and bashing his way through, but the psychopathic kid reveals his golden goddess, injects magic into the mystical ground, and melts the warrior's testosterone before sweeping Yuga to the brink. Feeling the noose tighten, Yuga ejects his massive engine from his sleeve. Maximum summon, vast Vulcan! The plan was to incinerate the playboy's life, but that damn lunar robot decides to pop its own arm out of its socket mid-stretch, glitching Yuga's card into a computer error screen. Through sheer fanatical fervor, the robot reattaches the socket with its metallic claws and saves the beast from limbo, allowing Yuga to launch a meteor into Yuo's face, nearly zeroing his resources. That's when the puppet master lets out that sickening laugh of someone who has the script in his pocket. He discards his monsters to summon something the hero's primitive brains can't even comprehend, spinning the ancient fusion card under everyone's noses. A six-sword cyborg aberration pierces the ceiling, 2 cards in one, absorbing the strength of Yuga's field and inflating to a sickening 6,100 attack. It penetrates the dragon's body, ripping the beast open from the inside out. Yuga flies back back like torn cardboard, hitting the ground unconscious while the circus dolls continue to whisper madness. Gavin gathers the student council nerds for a fancy meeting in a virtual reality restaurant to discuss how not to be humiliated by the new fusion mechanic. However, the rival school president, Janko, is having a withdrawal crisis, shaking like an addict in need of a card fix to keep from having a physical breakdown in front of everyone. Meanwhile, a seemingly harmless little girl named Botan sucks down every meal on the table at light speed, putting her stomach to work like a black hole about to devour the solar system. Outside, ex-president Mimi is now washing dishes for the rest of her life and gets into a mop fight with a restaurant brute because of some white sticky gunk left on his plate. She's at rock bottom, just like you when you cry looking at your credit card bill. With the table set again, Roman crashes the meeting just to fill her gut, but when the vacuum cleaner girl sneakily swallows her parfait, her stomach growls and Roman goes full berserk mode, losing her mind over any scrap of meat. To try and calm the beast, they focus on remembering the sacrifices of the past, specifically when the little robot Kaizo was transformed into a bicycle seat so everyone's butts could rub nicely against his face. The impact slams into the machine so hard it leaves it severely damaged. The chaos escalates into a madhouse when the Ninja Rain drops her dark diary about gorillas and heat. The glasses kid gets excited by Roman screaming for food, and Janko goes completely insane when his cardboard stock runs out. All of this while the genius Nail watches this chaotic daycare via a corporate monitor, sighing in pure and unconditional disgust for humanity. Yuga has become a depressed zombie, hammering away at his own inventions, his sanity deleted after being mercilessly obliterated by his rival. Out of nowhere, the lunatic shifts his giant drone into gear and kidnaps his friends on a suicide flight, crashing the flying machine and tearing Yuo's spacecraft ceiling to shreds. The impact knocks over Roman and her thermal pot full of sticky pink curry. The color of the sludge is so radioactive that Gavin fears this biological weapon will destroy the entire city if it leaks. Yuo notices the intrusion and unleashes an army of baseball-pitching drones to test the strength of the intruder's teeth, forcing Roman to show off her baseball skills. Far from this madness in the library, the rookie Swirls finds a mythical book detailing the dark magician. Mimi tries to bribe the boy for the book to reclaim her precious corporate throne. Since he refuses to sell his soul, the two draw cards and duel in the middle of the stacks. Swirls summons his dark magician girl, and literally declares his love for the plastic card, blowing up Mimi's elderly Diane Kito and burying the old lady's dreams for good. Back in space, Yuga completely ignores Yuo's sadistic villain monologue just to ask in a sleepy voice where the hell the fusion monster came from. When Yuo admits he found that piece of junk stuck in some foul-smelling space debris, Yuga gets so excited by the mystery that his brain shuts down and he faints onto Luke's chest. Yuo snaps after being ignored, summons his trash puppets, and opens an Iron Maiden to shred the teenagers. But a furious tiger breaks down the door, blowing everything up with her sheer grit. She short-circuits the Iron Maiden, and guess what? The useless Kaizo gets sucked into the torturous metal tube and violently hurled into the vacuum of space, screaming for a vacation as he floats frozen in the cosmic rot. Corporate psychopathy runs wild in Earth's orbit when Yuka corners Yuo, only for the puppet freak to smilingly confess he wants to usurp the company by deleting the entire game and sweeping his siblings into the cosmic trash. Holding the mysterious fusion card found in the space debris, he declares himself the future god of the corporate universe, leaving Yuka foaming with rage. Away from this unbearable family drama, Yuga's team spends their time at a conveyor belt sushi joint, with Roman furiously shoving rolls into her face without mercy, while the protagonist laughs maniacally about the fact that he was defeated. To rest their backs and enjoy the meteor shower, the idiots go to a field to lie on the ground, but a colossal baseball stadium sprouts from the earth, nearly crushing their skeletons. It's Yuka, bloodthirsty and demanding their best hitter face her wrath. Since Roman ingested so much raw fish that her stomach is a ticking biobomb, the egocentric rock star Roa takes the reins and marches onto the field, declaring he pays his own band's debts. Yuka immediately activates a flaming stadium, boosts the attack of her fire lackeys, and sacrifices life energy to bring her super slugger out to haunt the field. Roa responds by turning the arena into a musical schizo trip full of ecstatic holograms, summons his screaming level 7 metal demon, and shatters the girl's monsters with a fury of destructive sound waves, as the baseball executive screams in pain, torturing her own shoulder to buy cards and bring out the gigantic Player 99 Grand Slam Dragon with a bizarre 4,400 attack to blow up the singer's metal goddess. Roa just smiles. The madman throws his entire hand away, betting his soul on a top deck of useless cards. He infests the stage with musical freaks, sucks the power of the girl's flames into the abyss with a massive debuff, and hurls the ball straight into her face, reducing the heiress's health points to 0. Yuka curses, cries, and flies into the night sky on her bizarre space bike. Meanwhile, the animalistic Luke didn't find a star, so he goes back to his room in his pajamas only to panic, realizing that something dangerous he hides in a dark corner under his bed is missing. Running back into the woods, the Duel King finds a suspicious blue light glowing ominously at the foot of a tree. The League of Rejected Siblings decides to stage a corporate mutiny right from the roof of the elementary school, planning a fake peace treaty to crush the tyrant Yuo, who watches the whole farce from the comfort of space, hugging overturned portraits of his family victims. At the musical HQ, a muscular tiger appears foaming at the mouth because her useless brother hasn't come home. Immediately, Yuga activates an excrement tracking machine calibrated to the exact radioactive yellow curry Luke ate the night before, firing a signal straight to an isolated quarry. There, Yuo descends from his luxury ship demanding absolute obedience, only to be interrupted by a delusional nutjob dressed as a hero with a dragon helmet exhaling blue smoke, referring to himself in the third person as the formidable the Lukeman. The bizarreness hits nuclear levels when the addicted cosplayer points a finger in the villain's face and initiates a surreal clash. The suit and tie brat throws his glowing goddess onto the map, ready to end the horror show, but the hammy vigilante debuffs the poor girl and shatters the lady using a trashy star monster. Irritated by the commoner's audacity, Yuo rubs his supreme fusion card in everyone's face, mixing a cyber actor with a serpent to vomit out a dragon-slaying titan, obliterating the masked hero with an apocalyptic black laser. Relying on script immortality, the Lukeman survives with a shameful 100 life points. He cries out to the heavens for Pot of Greed, calls out the multi-striking Dragias, and pulls his own fusion card out of his sleeve from nowhere, turning the spectator's brains into mush. He merges his beasts into a divine hybrid immune to reptile-slaying traps, piercing the weak executive's defenses with 2 absolute slashes and sending Yuo into the beyond. Mist covers everything, and when it clears, the weird cosplayer has mysteriously vanished, and a pathetic Luke is left lying on the ground, blinking with skeptical amnesia.
I'm the Lukeman, and I used fusion to defeat you?
In orbit, the defeated and cornered Euron tries to seize the presidency from the losing Yule, but the maniac pulls a bizarre six-brother badge from his pocket as a supreme trump card. With a cliché cackle, he drops the floor out from under his brother, who falls screaming into a trapdoor to the abyss, while the lunar robot bizarrely continues to shimmy in a rotating squat on the surface of celestial corruption. While the useless fan club tries to discover the whereabouts of the amnesiac loser, Luke spends his day digging in the ground of an isolated quarry like a mangy stray looking for a fusion bone. The sociopathic suit Yuo appears out of nowhere and injects pure delusion into the boy's veins, convincing the moron that he is the mysterious 6th president of the corporation. Far from there, Yuga plays mechanic, tinkering with the circuits of an old robot nanny, while Mimi, the eccentric 37-year-old trapped in a child's body, leads her troupe of idle interns to invade the enemy HQ. Parading in cheap mascot costumes, they exploit the security's lack of intelligence to reach the presidential floor, only to run into the new, arrogant, and dictatorial version of Luke. Irritated by the commoner's audacity, who now demands to be called the Supreme President, Rockstar Rose slams his microphone into the floor and picks a fight. The singer summons a legion of heavy metal demons, annihilating the traitor's defense and crushing the boy's fragile ego, who sucks up his tears and sinks into a spiral of depression, sitting in a fetal position. But since the invisible hand of plot convenience forgives any cognitive limitation, Luke pulls the lever on a slot machine card, hits the jackpot, and vomits a trinity of monstrous dragons onto the table. Shielded by the disproportionate aggression of his deck, he annihilates Roa's rockers using raw, unbridled force, without even needing the coveted fusion card, screaming his glory to the heavens like a true playground dictator. Following the disgrace, the infiltrator Mimi raids the executive wardrobe and notices a peculiar missing item, linking the group's brain cells to conclude the obvious truth That bizarre mask is basically an alien steroid that drains every drop of Luke's sanity, transforming the moron into a costumed anomaly addicted to fusion summons. Aboard the luxury ship, Luke's corroded brain enters beast mode as he tries to claw the wallpaper off with his fingernails, traumatized to a primitive level by the gears drawn around the room, while the tiny executive villain watches his new mascot's schizophrenic show in bewilderment. The League of Rejected Siblings crawls to the useless protagonist, desperately begging for help to take down the tyrant. In the heat of the chaos, the traitor's muscular sister drags the main gang to their own billionaire family mansion, where a wealthy great-grandfather spends his free time rambling with excessive passion about mechanical nuts and bolts. The peace of the private nursing home is obliterated when Luke shows up at the house with a single pathetic goal: to ask his mommy for clean underwear. The existential offense is so grotesque that his sister, huffing like a runaway train, sweeps the pathetic boy through 5 walls using nothing but the raw force of a bassoon's breath before forcing him to duel for his stained dignity. In the backyard of humiliation, the girl orchestrates a bizarre band of martial demons. Trying to play the alpha male completely in control of his life, Luke throws his reptiles on the table but ends up brutally run over by the opponent's aggressive cacophony, seeing his energy wither to a measly 100 points. Just as his defeat was written in the stars, the smoke dominates the lawn, and the heroic schizophrenia resurfaces. Donning his extravagant rubber helmet, the formidable Lukeman takes the reins from the whimpering host. The weirdo activates his big, shiny fusion trump card, mixing his dragons to bring a two-headed stellar abomination armed with electrical cables into the world. The buffed-up titan unleashes a show of punishing lights, melting the demonic orchestra and shattering the sister without a shred of mercy. With the girl sprawled on the ground clutching her destroyed musical instrument, the cybernetic ship launches its red tethers and shamelessly abducts the victorious cosplayer into the sky. Faced with this irreparable mess, the useless protagonist embraces the dark side of back-alley dealings and architectures a sinister scheme with the former eldest loser of the corporation. The spoiled tyrant with an emperor syndrome hits the panic button of corporate dictatorship, ordering the child hacker Nail to bow before his absolute authority and demand he uncover who the hell invented this magic piracy known as fusion cards. While the AI prodigy throws it in his boss's face that the deadbeat protagonist figures things out way before he does, the main gang trudge through the thicket in search of the queen of backhoes and her militia of weirdo construction workers. The piece of the quarry is obliterated when the buff, schizophrenic sister rolls straight out of the right nostril of a giant stone tiger sculpture, having exhausted her life force carving holes into the rocks. Before she can try to shove her tool into the left hole and suffer a total collapse, the suit and tie villain pops up on the big screen and materializes the little genius in the arena as his personal dueling lackey. Taking up the mantle for her friend who collapsed on the cold ground, Asana hops on her heavy machinery and picks the fight. True to his broken nature, the Providence hacker wastes no time and spits his giant triple-headed dragon onto the field on the very first turn, rubbing the Maximum Colossus in the girl's face. But Asana doesn't back down an inch, mixing her lackey's monsters with her own earth dragons to summon a tactical Frankenstein of night pigeons and brutal elephants. In an absolute display of blatant hacking and a lack of self-respect, Nail recycles his boss monster 3 times in a row, forcing the poor driver to endure successive blizzard breaths to the gut. Surviving the massacre through the sheer power of her henchman's toxic friendship, Asana shoves her drill machine deep into the enemy's lines of code, exploding the dragon's 3 heads with a barrage of laser fire and shattering the submissive boy's glasses. Accepting his humiliation with a mysterious smirk, Nail loses the match, resigns from the high ranks, and simply wanders off into the woods, while his robotic massage chair suffers a dramatic breakdown and commits mechanical self-shutdown just to avoid being separated from its owner. Faced with his own employee's disgrace, Yuga tries to turn the tables until the drooling host of darkness, Luke, emerges as an insane shadow right behind him to spread general psychological terror. The time has come for the final showdown to save the world's sanity, and the Lukeman decides to summon cosmic orbs directly from the sky to don a rubber dragon costume, exuding the confidence of a cheap comic book vigilante. But the deadbeat protagonist isn't about to be outdone in this public humiliation contest. Sucking up the negative aura of space, he emerges wearing tight leather gear, sporting demonic makeup and a dark cape, self-proclaiming as the supreme destroyer of the evil empire, ready to punish the cosplayer with some budget brand villainy.
You got that right. I am the scourge of the galaxy, the creator of chaos. I'm Yuga the Destructor!
At that exact moment, the troop of betrayed corporate siblings bursts in on a fancy boat in the middle of the mud to drop the most absurd bombshell of this entire freak show. They reveal to the paralyzed crowd that the magical powers and created cards only exist because the brawny sister karate chopped a faulty fax machine as a child, electrocuting a hideous sketch made by her brother and spawning an alien digital god. You guessed it, the fate of the galaxy depends on a piece of scrap paper that was physically assaulted and came to life in cyberspace. Back in the neon-lit BDSM theater, the dark kid displays all the sadism of his evil alter ego, splashing heavy spells across the field to force the sinister sorceress to electrocute the stellar host, frying his life points without a shred of remorse. Desperate and dripping sweat inside his locked helmet, the space paladin draws his pirate trump card, forged from satellite junk, and performs his grand fusion. With a bizarre two-headed cyber dragon unleashing unforgiving orbital strikes, he slams the dark beanpole into the hard dirt. Realizing that embracing the evil empire was chafing his skin, the deadbeat protagonist changes the entire script with a schizophrenic play. Thanks to the corporate crown's robotic nanny firing a red helmet straight at his head, the boy rips off the black leather and dons an extravagant white jumpsuit, inventing the monumental lie that he isn't a demon lord, but rather Yugaman, the supreme sidereal ally of justice. Faced with the most blatant cinematic betrayal of all time, the AI drags out a rack of colorful clothes, coercing all the dim-witted friends who were just watching the massacre into becoming extras in the play, making everyone scream in shock at the absolute death of the last trace of human dignity. The theater of horrors reaches its peak when the deadbeat protagonist decides to play galactic hero, dragging his troupe of weirdos into a shameful collective cosplay as defenders of justice. Seeing the hysterical guitarist tied to a board in the middle of the set like some cheap tokusatsu villain's fetish, the helmeted sidereal lord fully commits to the neurosis and decides he's fighting for the fate of the galaxy. They immediately start clashing their robotic swords frantically on the field, with the protagonist summoning a giant supreme mecha stuffed with power to slice the opponent's dragon in half. Watching and foaming with rage at the audacity of this school play, the brother of puppets finally snaps, demanding the Space Lord stop playing comedy theater and crush everyone's hopes. The masked man obeys the tantrum and regurgitates a second insane fusion onto the board, leaving the boy in the white jumpsuit with absolutely no options since he doesn't even have the damn fusion card in his deck. But don't worry, because the rules of this game are as non-existent as his social skills. A literal meteor tears through the sky, crashing directly onto the boy's duel disc and handing him a magic card carved from stardust on a silver platter. Since the company's bizarre rulebook allows uncatalogued space junk flying onto the table, he fuses his monsters into a supreme paladin, swallowing all the magic power from the graveyard to obliterate the enemy creatures and zero out the freak's life points. The corporate owner goes into denial and tries to physically destroy the satellite data server with his own ship, but the annoying drone plunges from orbit inside an Iron Maiden, punches through the roof, and lands perfectly inside the rocker girl's pot of radioactive curry. The absurdly diabolical mixture short-circuits everything, sinking the ship in a quagmire and drenching the board of directors in humiliating pink slime. Accepting defeat, the weird alien finally leaves its host's body and leaks back into the vacuum of space. The cosmic dust finally settles, and the corporate siblings spend the whole day scrubbing radioactive glowing curry slime off the ship's walls, mysteriously treating the group's sadistic youngest brother with the same kindness one shows a sick puppy. The puppet boy instantly enters a delusional paranoia, certain he's about to be backstabbed, and flees to the local sandbox to sink into a lonely existential crisis while swinging his little legs. That's exactly where the hungry rocker and the student council president, incredibly still clinging to their tight hero costumes, pop up to strip away what little peace he had left. Threatening to lose her own sanity and destroy the city because of an empty stomach, the girl forces the 2-bit villain to stuff her mouth with creamy ice cream in exchange for revealing her universal wisdom. She chews the ice cream brutally and declares that the siblings' theater of kindness is nothing more than vulgar preparations for a surprise birthday party. A pathetic detail the executive moron had erased from his own memory. Resigned to rock bottom, the Dark Lord Project needs a humiliating crash course just to learn how to spell thank you, breaking into a cold sweat and choking like a primate while continuing to bankroll the crazy heroine's gluttonous delusions. After an exhausting rehearsal with ants and cheap street corner DJ rhymes, he drags his feet back to headquarters only to face the most depressing scene possible. The imposing student council president is in a full wig, whimpering while tied to the wall in a tight magical girl outfit, while the powerful suited siblings wear silver cardboard boxes as if they were low-budget aliens on guard duty. The cosmic humiliation ceases as they throw throw a sea of confetti in his bewildered face and scream, "Happy birthday!" which completely melts the pink youngster's wicked side. They fake a childish brawl, rescue the damsel in distress, and swallow a festive banquet, but the corporate smile dies on his face when enigmatic hallucinations of a buried duel begin to pierce the back of his bizarre mind. Corporate panic hits nuclear radiation levels at Goha HQ because the blue-haired prodigy quit, but our hack protagonist invades the room wearing a cramped uniform and shoving poor Kaizo into a bizarre machine to stabilize the servers, proving that any AI works as a cheap battery. While the suits kiss his ass, Yuo cries in his own office, remembering how his little brother took over the company right after the family fled to space, and how the former head of security now sweeps the sidewalk of a corner convenience store and refuses bribes to return to work. But there's no time for corporate drama, because the protagonist decides to commit traffic violations by riding a bike in the hallways, only to be stopped by the stressed-out student council president, who is now playing corporate traffic cop. The Moral and Manners Patrol is then run over by Oceania, an adult dressed as a fish replacing light bulbs in an absolutely precarious manner. Promoting absolute chaos, the fish girl shoves 500 cables into a single socket to power the fridge and video game in Luke's fake office, frying the system and plunging the entire building into a humiliating blackout. The traffic cop invades the filthy break room of the fish employee, who was comfortably taking her 12th nap in the middle of her own trash, and demands a duel to fix her lazy attitude. The situation is already depressing when the girl's dual disc won't open because it's stuck with leftover yakisoba sauce, forcing the Mr. Clean of the group to scrub her mess before he can even fight. With the field activated, the girl summons cybernetic sea freaks, doesn't read her own card text like a functional illiterate, and unleashes a 10,000-volt electric discharge straight into her opponent's face. Despite taking enough shock to light up a small town, the straight-edge kid holds his ground, summons his own dark commander, gathers the pieces, and performs a divine fusion that obliterates the electric fish in milliseconds. With her life points at 0 and her delusional dream of world domination via online fish sales destroyed, the disgusting employee calls everyone a loser and storms off in an inflatable raft. Cold sweat drips down the face of our supposed corporate prodigy as he sleeps on his keyboard, having traumatizing nightmares where a little girl is swallowed alive by a monstrous ladybug. He wakes up with a high-pitched scream at the sight of a harmless insect on his sleeve, proving that Goha's great savior is now a crybaby with a phobia of colorful cocoons. Meanwhile, the straight-laced traffic cop takes a depressing tour with runts wearing stuffed animal heads, completely blind to the fact that the insufferable insect club is sabotaging the trip. Swirls tries to hit on a lost little girl on the stairs, revealing her to be the same psychopath from the nightmare, who immediately hypnotizes the poor guy with a purple gaze and demands to be taken to the moldy protagonist. The insect maniacs invade the coward's office, and as soon as he lays eyes on the girl's gigantic ladybug hat, his brain completely melts. In a marvelous psychotic break, he straps the Kaizo drone into a bazooka exoskeleton and threatens to blow up the entire corporate building just to obliterate the hat, forcing his friends to drag him to a garden to resolve the trauma through a children's card game. The insect girl transforms the field into a grove of hallucinogenic mushrooms and summons giant cocoons that vomit ladybugs, chipping away at his life every turn while he hugs his legs and cries in the fetal position. About to flee his own den like a rat, the self-proclaimed president hits his magic watch and short-circuits the building, blocking the exit. By a pitiful miracle of writing, the blackout resets the protagonist's faulty cards, fixing his electronic junk and transforming the cards into 3 parts of a damn armored flying megazord. Wiping away his tears, he summons the gargantuan spaceship and incinerates the girl's hypnotizing ladybugs without a shred of mercy. After taking the damage point blank, the weirdo reveals the monstrous insect was just a velvet hat and vanishes in a puff of smoke, only to reappear at night in a terrifying trance, downloading company secrets via a flash drive disguised as an insect. The 37-year-old woman trapped in a middle schooler's body finally returns to corporate life, descending to the 45th basement level of the company, which looks more like an experimental meth lab where soulless extras play with radioactive purple spheres. While trying not to be obliterated by daily explosions, Mimi notices that our aspiring psychopathic chef has prepared not 1, but 2 pots of her lethal stew called curry, desperate for any poor soul to swallow her hot, thick broth. As soon as Mimi refuses to taste this biological atrocity, Roman forces the old lady to settle it in a children's card game, threatening to force the employee to open wide and swallow the slimy mixture if she loses. The scientists lock them both in a disaster-proof lab, knowing full well that combining the girl's bubbling liquid liquids would create a weapon of mass destruction capable of wiping the building off the map. During the duel, the masochistic rocker sacrifices her own life just to torture her opponent with high-volume noise pollution, while Mimi summons the master cook to gain points with pots of virtual soup falling from the sky. But Roman decides it's time to rub her shiny new toy in everyone's face, activating her magic card to eject a blue light and summon her cybernetic fusion monstrosity, decimate the old lady's monsters, and zero her points in the blink of an eye with a guitar riff to the chest. When the scientists try to confiscate the radioactive sludge for warfare studies, our resident hungry idiot drops from the ceiling drooling like a rabid dog, ignoring any sense of self-preservation to shove it all in his mouth, gulping the spicy creams directly from the pots in one go.
Between me and my curry! Move aside!
A massive explosion obliterates the entire underground section, painting the debris pink and blue, where he burps contentedly in the middle of the lethal smoke. Trying to process the chaos, the old lady's single functional neuron finally makes the connection that all the company's executives start with the syllable U, concluding in terror that the smiling, rule-collecting protagonist boy can only be the sixth corporate demonic heir. Acting with the inflated pose of a Wall Street tycoon, our self-proclaimed god of duels tries to impress his faithful followers by walking straight into a glass door like a blind pigeon. On his completely useless inspection tour of the company's departments, he witnesses the monotonous bureaucracy of stamps being smashed, tries to flee the rocker's pots of toxic cream, and ends up kicked out of the research division after one of the team's dogs literally urinates on the circuits of the talking drone addicted to modifications, proving that even stray animals recognize electronic junk when they see it. To save the day from the doldrums, a little boy with a mining fetish guides the troop of morons to an abandoned factory in the basement where they find nothing less than a clandestine magic card printer. After wasting time printing shameful cards with their own faces and fake attributes to massage their egos, the greedy excavator realizes he's found the divine Russian roulette for forging rare cards and swimming in dirty money for the rest of his youth. Since journalists smell fraud from miles away, the offended leader of the gossip club challenges the pickaxe kid, swearing to expose his crimes through the sacred and indispensable children's game of holographic monsters. The helmeted cheater vomits 3 giant hybrid lizards onto the table at once in his maximum summon, thinking he was stamping the deed to his own luxury mansion. Unfortunately, the media vigilante blocks his delusion by summoning a damn floating battleship with artillery weapons, fusing his insignificant little pieces. Using the foul power of investigative journalism, he forces his opponent to flip his own secrets, punishing the dinosaur's brute force for every bit of filth revealed until he obliterates the little capitalist into cosmic dust with an explosive beam of pure public defamation, as the defeated boy collapses to the floor in tears. Mourning the luxuries that will never come, the rotten ceiling finally gives way under the weight of the mess, crushing the infinite money machine under concrete. When the dust settles, and a random metal pot falls on the loser's head to humiliate him further, the protagonist finds a corporate ID badge on the floor with a disturbing name engraved on it, suggesting that their entire childhood friendship was nothing but a billion-dollar lie waiting for the right time to cut throats. While gossip runs wild in the office, the group's background characters set up their own conspiracy board and discover that Yuga is actually the 6th billionaire heir to the mega corporation, proving that nepotism has orthographic rules and only accepts those whose names start with U. As soon as the penny drops, Luke instantly activates his corporate leech mode, kissing his friend's ass in hopes of inheriting the vice president's chair. Mimi, sniffing out the desperation with pure boomer opportunist instinct, grabs Luke and proposes the ultimate capitalistic humiliation, an entertainment duel where Luke must spread his legs and hand over the victory on a silver platter to stroke the boss's fragile ego. Accepting the sale of his honor, Luke enters the arena ready to take a beating. Yuga wastes no time and pulls out his colossal magnum overlord on the very first turn. Luke tries to act like he's marveled by the colossal size of his friend's magnum, forcing out such pathetic compliments that they make Roman and Gavin gag in the audience. But Luke's acting is worse than a B-movie zombie. Yuga catches onto the theater, becomes lethargic, and tries to end the misery quickly. At that moment, Luke's primate brain short-circuits, reliving childhood traumas with his incompetent great-grandfather. Unable to hold back his hungry predator instincts, Luke kicks the corporate script into the trash and refuses to be submissive. Thinking he's going to punish the rebellious employee, Yuga draws a shiny new fusion, but Luke smirks diabolically, activates his broken traps, and vomits his own world-destroying fusion dragon. Completely ignoring the plan to lick the executive panel's boots, Luke thrashes his friend's new monster without a shred of mercy and pulverizes Yuga's life points in a heartbeat. Yuga throws a massive tantrum for being brutally beaten again, showing that infinite money in the bank doesn't buy skill in a card game. In the end, the capitalist thirst vanishes when the two idiots decide to swallow their wounded pride and slurp hot noodles together, sharing the same thick bowl as the sun sets. The entire corporate building suddenly turns into the set of The Walking Dead, with a horde of zombies invading the hallways. Gavin instantly channels the insufferable paranoid nerd from a survival movie, freaking out as he watches Mimi being devoured by the crowd, and Yash handing out beatings to his own friends while swearing he's helping. Amidst the absolute chaos, Luke honors his role as the useless protagonist and locks himself in a bathroom stall, crying and clutching his own cowardice. To save the day, Roman prepares a nuclear reactor disguised as curry in the cafeteria. The chemical mixture reaches critical mass and explodes in a blue biological tsunami, washing away all the zombies on the floor like a divine flush. Surviving the culinary disaster, Gavin flees to the helipad hoping to be rescued, only to see the preppy Yuo try to escape with tracker on a drone and crash miserably due to excess baggage, cementing the rule that fleeing rich guys always die in the first act. Surrounded by his rotted friends and a corpse like Yuga, Gavin is cornered by the riot leader, who challenges him to a duel using a stinking cybernetic Frankenstein, because apparently mixing urban legends is the new meta. The makeshift necromancer commands a carnival of atrocities and buffs his monster to beat down the student council president, but Gavin summons Yamaterasu, the shining lord of censorship. Using passive-aggressive humiliation tactics, Gavin forces the enemy zombies to their knees in defense position, activates a sadistic spell that zeroes out the main monster's points, and purifies the amateur gravedigger with a single flaming attack.
Creation slash!
Just as Gavin prepares to be the messiah of the apocalypse, the intercom announces the end of recess, and the corporate hologram reveals it was all just a damn HR Halloween party. Everyone wipes off their makeup, laughing at the council president's sucker face, after he ran marathons of suffering for nothing. While Gavin suffers a mental breakdown on his knees, realizing his role as the clown, the moronic Luke continues to scream in terror inside the private bathroom stall, terrified of the kid in the costume who simply refused to break character. The band of slackers consisting of Gavin, Roman, Roa, and Mimi suddenly realizes they know absolutely nothing about Yuga. They immediately switch into neighborhood gossip mode to investigate if he's the secret sixth heir to the Goha Corporation. Acting like amateur stalkers, they march toward the boys' house but are intercepted by Asana, riding on the back of her pet excavator. The traditionalist girl judges the group for stabbing their friend in the back, but she gives in to a violent duel when Roa decides to throw questionable pickup lines even at her machine, whispering to it about pretty girls and metal babies. On the battlefield, Asana summons a civil engineering monstrosity that mercilessly pummels the rocker. However, Roa abruptly brings out a dark metal lord buffed by graveyard cards, screaming into the mic until he blasts the tractor-driving socialite back to reality, winning the duel through sheer volume. With the path clear, the Identity Fraud League follows Yuga's trail only to find an army of 7 disturbing clones popping up in the middle of the street. While Gavin and Mimi suffer a mental breakdown thinking they face the clone apocalypse, the real Asana reappears dragging a Roman who is stuffed with shopping bags, revealing that the Roman in the group was a disguised villain all along. Nana sheds her skin-tight suit, openly mocking everyone's clown behavior for being manipulated into betraying the protagonist with the ease of stealing candy from a baby. After a humiliating lecture on how their bond is an absolute joke, the insect sorceress flees into the forest, laughing at their misfortune. With their dignity in the gutter, the quartet tearfully begs Asana for forgiveness, accepting they were born to be side villain doormats, while Swirls spends the entire day passively chewing on and swallowing Luke's neck in a zombie-like state. The duo of idiots deduces that the costumed boy was manipulated by forbidden magic planted by the insect spy. Hunger hits hard in the middle of the criminal investigation, forcing them to order a feast via an app, which is delivered by none other than the hacker prodigy Nail, now demoted to a full-time Uber Eats-style delivery rider. Confirming the brainwashing theory, they invade the abandoned Ninja ninja village, hunting the mastermind, but are brutally barred by Luke's psychopathic sister Tiger, who threatens them with the flames of hell. Ignoring the warnings of the brute, who doesn't even acknowledge the existence of her own brother crawling on the floor, Yuga picks a fight, thinking he has plot armor. He builds his giant maximum robot, thinking he's intimidating, but Tiger orchestrates a nightmare concert, fuses her demonic musicians, and obliterates the boy's entire field, sweeping his spells into the trash. In a desperate effort, Yuga creates a glorious spell with his buffed paladin and charges to finish the battle, but Tiger pulls a sadistic trap that zeroes out the foe hero's points, returning the attack with full force and launching Yuga through the air like a ragdoll. Saved only by the drone Kaizo activating a colossal robotic bodybuilder form to tank the thug's beating, the two flee crying straight to Yuga's house. Upon finding a normal suburban mom serving coffee, Luke finally realizes Yuga is far too poor to be a billionaire heir, killing the gossip once and for all. The intercom rings with a suit-clad Yuo Goha freaking out on the other end for being charged a fortune by a voicemail prank designed by Yuga. Remembering a late corporate meeting, the protagonist rushes to the boardroom, forgives his fake friends for stalking him earlier, and enters the room to face the elitist leader. Completely ignoring sanity, the masked suit Yuo calls a meeting to propose a merger between the corporate and rush formats, a blatant plan to shove his rules down the enemy's throat. To the collective horror of the group, Yuga simply agrees, thinking it's cool. However, when the drone Dole tries to execute the system, it warns that the spoiled brat is number 666,666 in the waiting line. It turns out Yuga used their greed to activate a rule factory that vomited thousands of absurd structures onto the moon, planting everything from motorcycles to space cows. Foaming at the mouth, Yuo tries to fire the boy on the spot, but the other billionaire siblings appear out of nowhere to stop the tantrum and shift the blame. Yuga then demands his part of the deal, asking for details about the forbidden card that Deep Clean Swirl's Hollowhead. The troop descends into the company's filthy basements, where Luke proves his negative IQ by fanning himself with a giant card materialized from his own corporate delusions. The gears print the iconic Monster Reborn spell, but Swirls suddenly snaps, jumps into the machinery, and receives a black dual disc spat out by the drone. Wanting to resolve the error with a beatdown, Yuo summons the formidable Materian King Cobra Star and recites a bizarre incantation to cure the kid's curse. The smoke clears, but the effort only serves as a pathetic performance. Swirl's chameleon costume ruptures, vomiting a dark goo that molds itself into an insufferable emo wannabe. He reveals himself as Yuga Goha, the mythical sixth sibling banished for enjoying the destruction of his opponent's dignity. Celebrating his sadistic awakening, the fallen angel drains his own life force to buff his predator Gunleon to an unbelievable 7,000 attack, firing a lethal blast that obliterates Yuo in a single hit and slams the poor guy against the concrete. While the siblings panic over the defeated masked boy, Yuga Goha snaps the drone onto his back like a bat-themed backpack, takes flight, and lands triumphantly in front of the insect ninja to promise a reign bathed in despair and darkness.
I didn't know the magic words. It'll be my honor to serve you.
The city turns into chaos, with small groups arguing over the superiority of pathetic formats based on sushi and the apocalypse. Yuga Goha descends from the sky like a bird of prey to teach everyone that a real duel involves beating your opponent until they cry on the sidewalk. The reptilian sadist runs over anyone who crosses his path, activating Monster Reborn to fry brains and erase the memories of those who lose. Nail, still disguised as a delivery rider, only avoids the mind wipe because his emergency dual disc was tied to a soulless drone, escaping the magic designed for humans. At the base, Roman has a narcissistic fit because the memory-wiped victims don't recognize her as a cute idol, ignoring the fact that Yuo has turned into a mentally useless creature playing with teddy bears in the boss's office. Exhausted and looking like a zombie stuffed with energy drinks, Yuga climbs to the helipad to face his dark counterpart head-on. He pulls out a flash drive with his kidnapped friend's data, engaging in cheap blackmail and betting his own memory in a life-or-death duel to end the neighborhood blackouts. Without hesitation, Yuga Goha starts by putting his own neck in the guillotine, bleeding massive amounts of life points to set his sadistic tools on the table. Our hero protagonist can barely stand. He summons his Seven's Road Magician, but quickly gulps when the villain pulls out his buffed lizard and manipulates an insane resource gap to strike for a cruel 7,400 guaranteed damage. In a miraculous reflex, Yuga flips the legendary Mirror Force, obliterating the enemy front line, but Yuga Goha vomits an even more broken trap from his sleeve, resurrects the master of crushing, and hits the target dead center, sending the protagonist to the canvas. In this moment of pure forced drama, his team tears through the sky. Luke jumps from a falling ship just to play the macho acrobat, pretends his tears are out of compassion, and catches the protagonist who has fainted from extreme physical fatigue. Showing that the rules of the script are toilet paper, Luke simply rips the disc off his friend's immobilized arm and takes command of the match, running the serious risk of a divine strike penalty, leaving everyone paralyzed with fear while the villain returns the offense with the most sickeningly cynical smile. While Gavin holds the protagonist's limp body, the sadistic Yuga Goha turns his psychopathic gaze toward our beloved idiot Luke, who decides to carry on the duel despite the villain laughing in his face. Luke summons his maximum monster with peak excitement, only to have a bucket of cold water dumped on him when Goha activates traps that negate everything and suck away the poor guy's hope. Nail tries to play the smart guy, claiming the big lizard will lose due to a lack of cards to draw, but the villain laughs at this pathetic logic and reveals his true size, boasting a monstrously thick 60-card deck that leaves everyone agape at such volume and depth. Without wasting time, Goha rubs the forbidden magic in society's face and brings Seven's road magician from the graveyard straight to his field before sacrificing his monsters to summon a bizarre pile of lizards with an absurd 6,100 attack. The villain launches an apocalyptic beam at Luke's chest, causing an energy explosion that sweeps the entire roof and fries the brains of almost every extra present. The magical flare should have erased our hero's mind, but since Luke's head is naturally hollow and bulletproof against intelligence, he walks out of the smoke intact thanks to a miraculous negation trap. With his blood boiling and ignoring all common sense, Luke begins the turn of his life, recycling half the graveyard through pure hatred. He performs an absurd juggling act, returning cards to the enemy's deck just to deflate the massive attack of that scaly monstrosity and melt the villain's advantage. The humiliation show ends when Luke pulls a fusion card out of thin air, brings the giant Seven's paladin to the field, and slices the master of blackouts in a single brutal blow, zeroing his life points. But instead of accepting defeat like an adult and shaking the winner's hand, the sadist simply throws a tantrum, snaps a drone onto his back that turns into bat wings, and flies into the sky like a winged coward.
I will rain chaos upon the world and turn your lives upside down. You've been warned.
The dust settles and Luke finally realizes the tragedy. His entire team stands up with idiot faces, their memories completely wiped by the previous attack. Later at the hospital, the protagonist wakes up confused, and Luke hides the fact that their friends now have the IQ of a revolving door by inviting him to eat some pathetic noodles. The next day, the corporate power addict Mimi tries to record a commercial pretending the company is a paradise of productivity and smiles, but the weight of reality soon hits, and she remembers the absolute madhouse the place has always been. Wandering irritably through the corridors, the middle-aged executive stumbles upon the most pathetic scene possible: the powerful Goha siblings dressed as dirty rebel bikers on a motorized vehicle, beating mosquitoes with wooden swords in a collective existential crisis. Seeing this completely out-of-control daycare and the leader Yuo sleeping at his desk surrounded by teddy bears, Mimi salivates at the chance to finally usurp the presidency once and for all. Questioning how such immature primates gained so much power, the brats open their mouths to pour out family trauma worthy of a cheap soap opera, explaining they were chosen by a lunar supercomputer with serious criteria issues. Apparently, the winged villain with a memory-erasing fetish was just a super-sensitive boy who one day accidentally wandered into an adult center full of violent thugs, who beat him up in a card game and turned the poor kid's pure mind into an infinite well of sadism. Yuro cries his eyes out, revealing that the boy started beating everyone else up without mercy, until the day they decided to play with the corporate printer, sealed the boy's evil personality in a digital punch, and accidentally deleted their own memories like a bunch of amateurs. Mimi listens to the story with zero empathy and tries to use it as the final argument that children are unfit to head a mega corporation. But in a surge of colossal and irremediable stupidity, she tries to dismiss the little delinquents by firing off an overwhelming motivational speech, guaranteeing that each of them is totally awesome and vital to the future. In seconds, the siblings swallow the fluff fluff, rip off their depressing biker clothes, regain the fire in their eyes, and declare, in an absurdly theatrical way, that they will save the world together. Mimi almost has an aneurysm, realizing she dug her own grave and actively destroyed her guaranteed coup d'etat, leaving her with the sad role of cafeteria auntie, stuffing this pack of mini executives with spicy sausages, while far away, the winged psychopath admires the moon, rubbing his hands for his next atrocity. Yuga pedals to school trying to pretend life hasn't turned into a complete disaster, given that his best friends have suffered an inevitable factory reset of their brains. Roman now treats the robotic drone like radioactive waste, causing the pathetic machine to short-circuit from rejection, and Gavin has returned to being the neurotic hall monitor who takes pleasure in humiliating late students. Seeing that the collective amnesia even hit the heavy hitters, Luke has the most brilliant and criminal idea possible: to pirate the Forbidden Monster Reborn card using the corporation's underground printer to force rewrite everyone's minds. Arriving at the subterranean factory, the group of useless characters is interrupted by a video call from Yuga Goha, the villain with the bizarre memory-erasing fetish. The sadistic kid shows a live feed of him about to thrash the ancient hologram Otis just to prove his magical piracy is far superior. In a frenetic duel mixing glorified smoke and birthday party magic tricks, Otis summons his tough dark magician and almost obliterates the psychopath's armored reptiles. But the boy is the absolute master of cheating, sinking a humiliating combo that steals the old man's ace card, activates Monster Reborn, and mercilessly slaughters his life points, vaporizing old Otis's memories in the process, while our protagonist cries internally, reflecting on the questionable ethics of using a brainwashing card to cure his friends. The ladybug-dressed villain decides the plot needs explosions worthy of a cheap action movie. She simply smiles and hits a detonator, blowing the magic printer into 1,000 flaming pieces. To put the final nail in the gang's coffin of hope, Yuga Goha himself throws his copies of the miracle card on the ground to be devoured by a swarm of weird insects, ensuring the group's psychological trauma remains perfectly intact. With the card printer turned into smoking scrap metal, the useless protagonist pretends this is morally correct, while Luke fully embraces his latent insanity and decides that the foolproof cure for amnesia is cringe-worthy amateur theater. Taking the director's chair with low-grade sunglasses, the self-proclaimed king of duels mounts a robotic massage chair to play the elderly Otis, while a pint-sized ninja girl pretends to be Roman. The moronic plan consists of reenacting the exact moment the original duels were created, hoping to force-feed Gavin enough nostalgia until his brain starts working again. The problem is that the execution is so shameful it would make any drama student melt with disgust. Gavin enters the underground lair and completely ignores the emotional trap, appearing in an elitist white uniform and flanked by 2 masked bodyguards that make him look like a high school mini-dictator. The student council president ridicules the gang's pathetic little play and fiercely preaches that any variation of the traditional rules is a filthy heresy, promising to purge all creative formats through dull military discipline. Realizing the acting class has failed miserably, Reno throws the chewed-up script in the trash and decides to fix the neurological damage through the oldest addiction in this universe: a good, violent children's card duel. He pulls out his disc, shoving an absurd combo of giant carnivorous plants straight into the faux dictator's face. The miracle idea of curing amnesia with holographic paper aggression instantly infects the rest of the supporting cast. In fractions of a second, an excavator fanatic challenges the heir Asana to stop her from dismembering his pet robots, while the revolted massage chair invades the corporate building to brawl with the hacker nail, proving that absolutely no problem in these people's lives can be solved by a simple trip to a therapist. Gavin is dominating the field with his dark monster, acting like a petty student union dictator and punishing anyone who breathes the wrong way. Reno takes a holographic blow straight to the stomach and realizes the only way to cure this preppy kid's amnesia is by appealing to public humiliation. He rips off his clothes in the middle of the duel to reveal a pink hoodie and a ridiculous wig, cosplaying as a kid's party DJ to remind Gavin of his most shameful phase. Rain joins the embarrassment dance and launches her own rich kid rapper look. Elsewhere, aggressive therapy remains the best medicine. Galeon teams up with 3 old-timer cards and summons a giant 3-headed excavator to dig up Asana's lost memories through pure mechanical aggression. Seat Bastion does exactly the same against Nail, because nothing says, "I love you," more than throwing a colossal space dragon into your best friend's face. Back at the theater of the absurd, the twins decide that the best response to Gavin's lockdown is to rub 2 plants together until they fuse into a massive hard wooden submarine. They fire their wet torpedoes directly at the council president, leaving the boy demoralized. The cranial trauma of the impact causes Gavin to have a bizarre historical hallucination of an ancestor who literally managed to stop an entire war by dancing like a complete idiot in front of the enemy castle. Realizing that being a moron is a deep family heritage, Gavin tears off his mini dictator uniform, returns to his usual kimono, and summons his own deity of light. He severs the twins' massive wooden submarine and finishes the duel without a shred of pity. Simultaneously, Asana crushes the giant excavator and nail disintegrates Seat Bastion's dragon, proving once and for all that beating up your friends with paper monsters magically restores irreparable neurological functions. Everyone celebrates, weeping with joy, completely ignoring that the pint-sized psychopath Nana is tucked away in the woods with her insect-costumed henchmen laughing at them, while a suit-clad executive with a baby's brain starts to remember how to play cards. The schoolyard has turned into a literal toddler madhouse, with brats brawling over whether it's better to duel dressed as a flower, a scrap metal robot, or a washed-up samurai. This flood of home-brewed formats invented by kids with ADHD is overloading the lunar server, which is on the verge of a meltdown because the original janitor had his brain factory reset. The tiny sociopath Yuga throws a temper tantrum upon discovering his enemies recovered their memories unscathed, but he skips for joy knowing the game system is about to collapse and delete everything. Meanwhile, the local squad of slackers finds out Roa's band is playing a secret show, but Roman has simply vanished off the map. Kaizo, proving to be the most unstable hunk of junk in the universe, tries to throttle the band manager for not knowing where the girl is. Determined to beat the arrogant musician with holographic cards until his brain starts working again, the group invades the concert venue. Even Mimi abandons her exhausting post as a babysitter for an infantilized CEO and rushes into the crowd to play the part of a crazed groupie. On stage, Roa shamelessly plays dumb, pretending not to know the protagonist and forcing his fans to watch him summon massive rock star demons to drain the strength of Yuga's magician. It all seemed like the usual drama until the ninja twins show up carrying a life-sized cardboard cutout of Roman. Luke gets the fright of his life, thinking the poor girl was flattened by a steamroller on the asphalt, but the siblings confirm she just ditched these losers to pursue a solo music career. Seeing Roa's total cynicism regarding the tragic news, Yuga's rusty gears finally start turning. He puts the basic math together, remembering that this bootleg amnesia spell doesn't affect kids who had strong bonds before the game rules changed. Yuga points a finger right in the rocker's face and drops the bombshell in front of everyone, revealing that Roa doesn't have a lick of amnesia and has just been faking it this whole time to score free attention, but the rocker keeps playing dumb. Tired of the mind games, Yuga simply drops a giant maximum monster on the table and blasts dozens of lasers into his opponent's face to see if aggression can cure amnesia. Roa survives with a trap, and finally admits he was just acting like a needy emo kid because the universe chose Yuga as the protagonist and gave Roman a solo career, leaving him sidelined. Instead of finding this pathetic, the teenage fangirls go wild, crushing Mimi against the stage in a fit of collective hysteria. Gaining an instant ego boost, Roa summons his rock demons and starts a light show to drain the power of Yuga's monster. The match turns into a battle of whose ego is bigger. Yuga loses his heavy hitter but decides to show he knows how to play the fusion game, throwing two magicians into the tribute hole to summon Seven's Road Wiz with a bizarre 6,500 attack points. Roa is nearly wiped off the map but survives again, proving his plot armor is in pristine condition. At the peak of the musical breakdown, Roa uses a field spell to demote Yuga's monster, allowing his heavy metal lead singer demon to swallow the enemy magician whole and vomit a final attack, shredding Yuga into the pavement with a lethal mic drop. The two shake hands as if nothing happened while the fans beg for an encore. At the same time, over at corporate HQ, the boy genius Yuo Goha types frantically on a holographic keyboard, trying to solve the plot's puzzle through pure, lonely instinct. Roman has officially become a walking billboard for the music industry, doing photo shoots and receiving an exclusive guitar from her idol, Princess G. Far away, the gang of slackers watches the girl's promotional video, but Luke has a total meltdown. He starts mixing nonsensical culinary metaphors, comparing Roman's smile to a honey-covered cucumber and complaining about soy sauce pudding, ensuring everyone in the lab thinks he needs urgent psychiatric help before he runs off to cry in a dark alley. Seeking comfort in the infamous student club room, Luke finds Roman's dual guitar just as the journalism club breaks in to sniff out some gossip. Their leader, Scoop, tries to humiliate our protagonist by forcing him to work in the newsroom, but the kid decides the best response is to strap the guitar to his his chest and resolve his emotions by beating children with cardboard holographic cards. Scoop tries to set up an entire printing press on the battlefield, but Luke spits Dragias onto the table and obliterates the reporter in a single blast of light so violent that the virtual head trauma causes the entire journalism club's brains to reboot and recover their lost memories.
I remember.
During Roman's majestic debut concert, idiotic fans start a massive brawl over which card game format is better, forcing the Kaizo drone to faceplant into a random extra's face. Just as chaos takes hold, Luke bursts through the stadium doors leading an army of side characters he just cured of amnesia by way of a beatdown to demand order. Seeing the circus invading her show, Roman's neurons finally connect. She chokes back tears and remembers everyone. But just as friendship was about to ruin the record label's party, Princess G steals the spotlight and demands a monstrous duel against Roman to stop her from throwing her career in the trash once and for all. All this while, the villain Yuga Goha floats through the air dressed as a flying squirrel, having an existential crisis. Some lunatic named Yujin is singing to the ocean like a budget mermaid until a random sailor pops up with a cooler full of magical books. Meanwhile, in the arena, Princess G corners Romin with a ridiculous ultimatum, telling her she has to choose between playing cards or playing the guitar, because apparently having two hobbies is a federal crime. Roman panics, but Luke tosses her the dual guitar and the musical brawl begins. Princess G goes first and summons psychic monsters that belong in an asylum, sacrificing her dignity to bring out a 2,400 attack woman before dropping an absurd fusion. She fuses Prima Guitarna to create Ultimate Pride Princess, a blue-armored musical aberration that vomits guitar solos so violent they obliterate Roman's monsters and nearly burst everyone's eardrums. But Roman refuses to give up the sweet life of having two careers and responds by jamming her own spell card into the disc. The girl summons Princess Omega, forcing all the opponent's guitarists to stand up and take the attack head-on. Roman shreds the strings and screams commands until Ultimate Pride Princess loses its nerve and its attack drops, allowing Princess Omega to fire a sound blast so brutal it sends Princess G flying back, humbling the veteran at her own game. With victory secured, Roman realizes she can easily cash in on both jobs and goes to pack her fan gear. Luke tries to be sweet but suffers a metaphorical stroke and tells her that her smile looks like a melon instead of a honey-covered cucumber. Up in space, the suit and tie brat Yuo finally scans the recovered books and his brain reboots with childhood memories, just as he sees Yuga plummeting from the sky like a meteor of stupidity. Luke decides to wear a monarch costume and has hallucinations where all his friends are submissive to him. But the schizophrenic illusion ends when Yuo interrupts with a sinister bedtime story. He narrates a tale about a sorcerer who destroyed the physical elements and the moon to exterminate the master of chaos, proving the author of this legend was on some heavy substances. While they try to process the trauma, the sociopath Yuga Goha is kidnapped in the middle of the street by a pack of ninja girls dressed as insects, landing him in a captivity that looks more like a questionable cosplay convention. Suddenly, the lab screen flickers on and old man Otis appears on a live stream, revealing he created the resurrection card just to manipulate the villain. Nail warns that to stop the moon servers from exploding, someone needs to physically destroy the city's control system. Luke prepares to use his hidden power, strikes a mental patient pose, and screams until his neck veins pop, but the only thing he achieves is making soda cans spray out of a vending machine. Realizing the boy is useless on the surface, the group decides to dig a hole in the ground until they find a giant vault door. Luke's powerhouse sister arrives with their great-grandfather and solves the problem by landing a punch that shatters a stone door designed to be opened with keys. Inside, Luke discovers his mystical watch is actually just defective scrap metal rejected by the industry. Seeing her brother hit rock bottom, the girl rubs salt in the wound, calling him a coward who uses card games to run away from life's responsibilities and insinuating that Yuga is just a useless brat focused on trivialities. Luke completely loses his sanity upon hearing his bestie being insulted. He crushes the watch box with his bare hand and pulls out his dual disc to resolve his family trauma by beating his own sister in a game of holograms. Tiger starts off swinging, summoning her musical monsters, and blowing hard into her instrument to rub it in her brother's face that real life punishes you. Luke tries to hold his ground with his pet dragons, but their great-grandfather stays in the crowd, shouting incoherent things like an escaped nursing home patient. Tiger fuses her monsters into a grotesque orchestral titan, lecturing him that his dreams are useless trash, and fires an energy beam that nearly disintegrates our backup protagonist. Luke pulls strength from the depths of despair, fuses his own creatures into a mutant and tries to fight back, but his truculent sister activates a trap to blow up his hope once again. It's at this moment that Luke's battered brain reaches peak enlightenment. He proclaims himself the honored one between heaven and earth, activates a resurrection spell, brings the good old Dragies back, and obliterates his crying sister's life bar. But while they are rolling on the ground in a physical brawl, everyone's pocket watches start glowing bizarrely. The senile grandpa reveals he used a strange metal called gohanium that reacts with their family's radioactive and defective genetics. The result is a massive electromagnetic pulse that simply shuts down the entire planet's power and crashes the lunar servers. Nail warns that the idiots just bought themselves one more day of survival by triggering an accidental digital apocalypse, while Asana warns that the only solution now is to head to space. Faced with the urgency of saving the lunar servers, Asana presents the most sensible solution possible for middle schoolers: a rusty spaceship built in her company's backyard. The Goha corporate siblings show up humoring themselves and begging for help, and Asana takes on the burden. Since conventional fuel is for the weak, they fill the ship's thrusters with Roman's dense, hot curry. With an engine literally powered by unstable spices, the rocket takes off in an absurd jet of colorful vomit toward the stratosphere. In space, the useless rocker Roa decides that pressing unidentified buttons on the dashboard is a great idea, slamming the accelerator and making Yuga nearly puke his guts out from space sickness during a frantic trip. Upon hitting the moon, the group encounters a giant robot sculpted in the image of the bald geezer Otis, piloted by a weird group of space girls. Wasting no time, the teenagers invade and power up their own giant mecha, putting on shiny tiaras to create an embarrassing synergy and initiate a duel of galactic proportions. Otis isn't playing around and spits his favorite fetish onto the field, Seven's Road Magician, but in a gothic blue fire version. Yuga tries to silence the old man by summoning his maximum monster through pure hatred at the exact minute the city's power returns to normal on Earth and wakes up the lunar drones. Laughing in the teens' faces, Otis revives his magician, obliterates the maximum dragon with humiliating ease, and continues the massacre by incinerating Yuga's secondary monsters. The cowardly attack fries the magnetic field, engulfing the 7 youths inside the cockpit with a massive electric shock to make it clear that the moon doesn't mess around. The space circus reaches biblical proportions when the Goha suits launch the Star 6 ship, realizing the lunar drones failed simply because everyone stopped working to watch a giant robot fight on their tablets. In the vacuum of orbit, Yuga decides to put on a cover band show and pours the classic Seven's Road Magician onto the field alongside prima guitarna and heavy metal. But before he can open the holographic mosh pit, Old Man Otis starts hurling chunks of the corporate server in the form of colossal parfaits, glowing catfish, and flying ramen bowls, proving that the apocalypse is just one big all-you-can-eat buffet. While the extras on Earth uninstall their own profiles to create a space shield made of old cameras, animal masks, and toasters, the corporation's ship tears through the cosmic scenery. Yuga takes advantage of the chaos to obliterate Otis's front line, making the bald geezer whine that duels have become too bureaucratic and that the only reasonable geriatric solution is to delete reality entirely. The grumpy senior spits his ultimate aberration onto the field, a magician fused with darkness, Darkness 7's Road Magician, that reaches a surreal 6,200 attack and literally vaporizes the group's hopes. Yuga tries to fight back by assembling an absurd Dragon Knight with 8,600 power, but Otis activates a cowardly trap to reflect the lethal attack back at the kid's machine. When it all seemed like the end of the line, the universal collapse is cancelled for the most idiotic reason possible. The alarm goes off and Otis's space interns refuse to work unpaid overtime, abandoning the giant mecha in a unionized exit and leaving the old man to rot alone in space. With the enemy retreating behind the moon with shattered morale, Yuga is infected with suffering protagonist syndrome. He removes all his friends from the cockpit and ruthlessly ejects them into the vacuum toward the Star 6 to play the part of the lonely martyr. Obviously, Luke is allergic to common sense. He puts on his embarrassing Lukeman costume, swims through the cosmic freeze, and invades Yuga's robot by force, demanding a duel where the trophy is the absolute right not to die alone in the dark. Inside the rusty carcass of the space robot, plot, the most useless and possessive duel in the universe begins between Yuga and Luke, with the card fanatic screaming that he'd never let his bro turn to dust alone. Luke vomits a muscular alternative version of his eternal Dragias onto the table, ruthlessly beating the protagonist's life points down to mere crumbs. To make the humiliation worse, he locks Yuga's spells in a vault, ensuring the kid is totally helpless, unable to pull the miracle card that was conveniently in the other deck. With no legal way to bail himself out, Yuga embraces total delinquency. He pulls his own corporate ID card from his pocket, tosses it into Luke's lap, opens the ship's hatch, and spits his best friend into the freezing throat of the universe for the second time in one day. While Luke orbits in despair trying not to become a space popsicle, Yuga's hacked card magically manifests as Seven's Road Magician and shreds his dragon to pieces. With the genius cheat secured, Yuga puts a plastic crown on his head and slams the accelerator of the metal tub toward Otis. In the final rematch, the old man tries to call for a VAR review to disqualify Yuga for playing without ID, but the teenager hits the cosmic suicide button and boosts the junk heap to light speed. In a flaming crash covered in the shiny sludge of friendship, Yuga obliterates Otis and evaporates into the stellar abyss. Cut to 2 years in the future, where the time skip has blessed the characters. The corporate babies have become first-grade street thugs, Gavin is crying blood while being eternally humiliated in the vice presidency, and Luke spends his days melted on the school roof whining like an inconsolable widow. Unwilling to tolerate the melodrama, Roman lands a double flying kick to the boy's gut and locks him in a choking armbar until the piece of trash confesses he has no purpose without someone to mock him. Before his elbow snaps, Roman throws binoculars at Luke's face, spotting the old ship tearing down through the stratosphere. The whole gang hitches a stealth ride on a bicycle and runs over hacked invisible bridges until they invade the beach. When the pod cools down, Yuga emerges posing in a space dictator overcoat, activating the kid's dual discs, which snap hard and erect once more into the shape of the number 7, announcing that the true capitalist addiction has been restored to the planet.